Chapter 30. The two of them scrambled over the low hedge into the woods. Colonel Sanders took a small flashlight out of his pocket and illuminated the narrow path. The woods weren't very deep, but the trees were hugely ancient, the tangle of their branches looming darkly above. A strong grassy odor came from the ground below. Colonel Sanders took the lead, for once maintaining a leisurely pace, shining the flashlight to make sure of its footing. He cautiously took the step, one step at a time. Hoshino followed right behind. "Hey, Unc. Is this some kind of dare or something?" he said to Colonel's white back. "Wah, ghost! Why don't you zip it for a change?" Colonel Sanders said without turning around. Okay. Hoshino suddenly wondered how Nakata was doing. Probably still sound asleep. It's like the term sound asleep was invented just to describe him. Once he falls asleep, that's all, she wrote. What kind of dreams does he have, though, during those record-breaking sleeps? Hoshino couldn't imagine. Are we there yet? Almost, Colonel Sanders replied. Tell me something, Hoshino began. What? Are you really Colonel Sanders? Colonel Sanders cleared his throat. Not really, I'm just taking on his appearance for a time. That's what I figured, Hoshino said. So, what are you really? I don't have a name. How do you get along without me? Without one. No problem. Originally, I don't have a name or a shape. So you're kind of like a fart. You could say that, since I don't have a shape and I can become anything I want. Huh. This time I decided to take a familiar shape, that of a famous capitalist icon. I was toying with the idea of Mickey Mouse, but Disney's particular about the rights of their characters. I don't think I'd want Mickey Mouse pimping me anyway. I see your point. Dressing up like Colonel Sanders fits your character too. But I don't have a character, or any feelings. Shape I may take, converse I may, but neither God nor Buddha I am. Rather, an inscendent being, whose heart thus differs from that of a man. What the? A line from Ueda Akinari's Tales of Moonlight and Rain. I doubt you've read it. You got me there. I'm appearing here in human form, but I'm neither God nor Buddha. My heart works differently from humans' hearts, because I don't have any feelings. That's what I mean. Hoshino said. I'm not sure I follow, but what you're saying is you're not a person and not a god or Buddha either, right? Neither God nor Buddha. Just the insensate. As such, of the God and bad of men I neither inquire nor follow. Meaning, since I'm neither God nor Buddha, I don't need to judge whether people are good or evil. Likewise, I don't have to act according to standards of good and evil. In other words, you exist beyond good and evil. You're too kind. I'm not beyond good and evil, exactly. They just don't matter to me. I have no idea what's good and what's evil. I'm a very pragmatic being, a neutral object, as it were, and all I care about is consummating the function I've been given to perform. Consummate your function. What's that? Didn't you go to school? Yeah, I went to high school, but it was a trade school. I spent all my time screwing around on motorcycles. I'm kind of an overseer, supervising something to make sure it fulfills its original role, checking the correlation between different worlds, making sure things are in the right order, so results follow causes and meanings don't get all mixed up. So the past comes before the present, and the future utter it. Things can get a little out of order, that's okay. Nothing's perfect. If the account book's basically in balance, though, that's fine for me. To tell you the truth, I'm not much of a detailed person. The technical term for it is abbreviating sensory processing of continuous information. But I don't want to get into all that. It may take too long to explain, and I know it's beyond you. So let's cut to the chase. What I'm getting at is I'm not going to complain about each and every little thing. Of course, if the accounts don't eventually balance, that is the problem. I do have my responsibility to consider. I got a question for you. If you're such an important person, how come you're a pimp in a back alley in Takamatsu? I am not a person, okay? How many times do I have to tell you? Whatever. Pimping's just a means of getting you here. There's something I need you to lend me a hand with. So, as a reward, I thought I'd let you have a good time first. A kind of formality we have to go through. Lend you a hand. As I've explained, I don't have any form. I'm a metaphysical, conceptual object. I can take on any form, but I lack substance, and to perform is a real act. I need someone with substance to help out. And at this particular point, that substance happens to be me. Exactly, Colonel Sanders replied. They cautiously continued down the path, and came to a smaller shrine beneath a thick oak tree. The shrine was old and dilapidated, with no offerings or decorations of any kind. Colonel Sanders shined his flashlight on it. The stone's inside here. Open the door. No way, Hoshino replied. You're not supposed to open up shrines whenever you feel like it. You'll be cursed. Or nose will fall off. Or your ears, or something. Not to worry. I said it's alright, so go ahead and open it. You won't be cursed. Your nose and ears won't fall off. God, you can be really old-fashioned. Then, why don't you open it? I don't want to get mixed up in this. How many times do I have to explain this? I told you already, I don't have substance. I'm an abstract concept. I can't do anything on my own. That's why I went to the trouble of dragging you out there. And letting you do it 3 times at a discount rate. Yeah, man, she was fantastic. But robbing a shrine? No way. My grandfather always told me not to mess with shrines. He was really strict about it. Forget your grandfather. Don't lay all your Gifu Prefecture country bumpkin morality on me, okay? Why don't you have time? We don't have time for that. Grumbling, all the while Hoshino hesitantly opened the door to the shrine, and Colonel Sanders shined in flashlight inside. Sure enough, there was an old round stone inside, just like Nakata said. It was about the size of a big rice cake, a smooth, white stone. This is it? Hoshino asked. That's right, Colonel Sanders said. Take it out. Hold on a minute. That's stealing. No matter. Nobody's going to notice if a stone like this is missing, and nobody will care. Yeah, but the stone is owned by God, right? He's gonna be pissed if I take it out. Colonel Sanders folded his arms and stared straight at Hoshino. What is God? The question threw Hoshino for a moment. Colonel Sanders pressed him further. What does God look like, and what does he do? Don't ask me. God's God. He's everywhere, watching what we do, judging whether it's good or bad. Sounds like a soccer referee. Sort of, I guess. So God wears shorts, has a whistle sticking out of his mouth, and keeps an eye on the clock. You know that's not what I mean, Hoshino said. Are the Japanese God and the foreign God relatives, or maybe enemies? How should I know? Listen, God only exists in people's minds. Especially in Japan, God's always been kind of a flexible concept. Look at what happened after the war. Douglas MacArthur ordered the Divine Emperor to quit being God. And he did, making a speech saying he was just an ordinary person. So after 1946, he wasn't God anymore. That's what Japanese gods are like. They can be tweaked and adjusted. Some American chomping on a cheap pipe gives the order, and presto, change all gods, no longer God. A very postmodern kind of thing. If you think God's there, he is. If you don't, he isn't. And if that's what God's like, I wouldn't worry about it. Okay. Anyway, just get the stone out, would you? I'll take full responsibility. I might not be a good God or a Buddha, but I do have a few connections. I'll make sure you aren't cursed. For sure? I won't go back on my word. Hoshino reached out and carefully, like he was inching out a landmine, picked up the stone. That's pretty heavy. This isn't tofu we're dealing with. Stones tend to be heavy. But even for a stone, it's heavy, Hoshino said. So what do you want me to do with it? Take it home and put it next to your bed. After that, things will take their course. You want me to take you back to the inn? You can take a cab if it's too heavy, Colonel Sanders replied. Yeah, but is it okay to take it so far away? Listen, every object is in flux. The earth, time, concepts, love, life, faith, justice, evil. They're all fluid and in transition. They don't stay in one form or in one place forever. The whole universe is like some big FedEx box. This stone's temporarily here in the form of a stone. Moving it isn't going to change anything. Alright, but what's so special about the stone? It doesn't look like much of anything. The stone itself is meaningless. The situation calls for something. At this point in time, it just happens to be the stone. Anton Chekhov put it best when he said, if a pistol appears in a story, eventually it's going to be fired. Do you know what that means? Nope. Colonel Sanders sighed. I didn't think so, but I had to ask. It's the polite thing to do. Much obliged. What Chekhov was getting at is this. Necessity is an independent concept. It has a different structure from logic, morals, or meaning. Its function lies entirely in the role it plays. What doesn't play a role shouldn't exist. What necessity requires doesn't need to exist. That's what you call dramaturgy, logic, morals. Or meaning don't have anything to do with it. It's all a question of rationality. Chekhov understood dramaturgy very well. Whoa, you're way over your head. The stone you're carrying there is Chekhov's pistol. It will have to be fired. So, in that sense, it's important. But there's nothing sacred or holy about it. So don't worry yourself about any curse. Hoshino frowned. The stone's a pistol. Only in the metaphorical sense. Don't worry. Bullets aren't about to shoot out. Colonel Sanders took a huge furoshiki cloth from the pocket and handed it to Hoshino. Wrap it in this. Better for people not to see it. I told you it was stealing. Are you deaf? It is not stealing. We need it for something important. So, we're just borrowing it for a while. Okay, I get it. Following the rules of dramaturgy. We're of necessity moving matter. Precisely, Colonel said, nodding. See, you understand what I'm talking about. Carrying the stone wrapped in navy blue cloth, Hoshino followed the path back to the woods. Colonel Sanders lighting the way for him with his flashlight. The stone was much heavier than it looked and Hoshino had to stop a few times to catch his breath. They quickly cut across the well-lit shrine grounds so no one could see them, then came out on the main street. Colonel Sanders hailed a cab and waited for Hoshino to climb in with a stone. "So, I should put it next to my pillow, huh?" Hoshino asked. "Right," Colonel Sanders said. "That's all you have to do. Don't try anything else. Just having it there is the main thing." "I should thank you for showing me where the stone was." Colonel Sanders grinned. "No need. Just doing my job. Just consummating my function. But hey, how about a girl, Hoshino?" "She was amazing. I'm glad to hear it." "She was real, right? Not a fox spirit or some abstraction or something messed up like that?" "No spirit, no abstraction, just one real live sex machine. Genuine four-wheel drive lust. It wasn't easy to find her, so rest assured." "Phew," Hoshino sighed. By the time Hoshino laid the cloth-wrapped stone next to Nakata's pillow, it was already past 1 a.m. He figured putting it next to Nakata's pillow instead of his own lessened the chance of any curse. As he'd imagined, Nakata was still out like a proverbial log. Hoshino untied the cloth so the stone was visible. He changed into his pajamas, crawled into the other futon, and instantly fell asleep. He had one sort of short dream of a god in short pants, hairy shins sticking out, racing around the field, playing a flute. At 5 at morning, Nakata woke up and found the stone beside his pillow. Chapter 31. Just after 1 o'clock, I take coffee up to the second-floor study. The door, as always, is open. Miss Saeki is standing by the window, gazing outside, one hand resting on the windowsill. Lost in thought, unaware that her other hand's fingering the buttons on her blouse. This time, there's no pen or writing paper on the desk. I place the coffee cup on the desk. A thin layer of clouds covers the sky, and the birds outside are quiet for a change. She finally notices me, and, pulled back from her thoughts, comes away from the window, sits down at the desk, and takes a sip of coffee. She motions for me to sit in the same chair as yesterday. I sit down and look at her across the desk, sipping her coffee. Does she remember anything at all about what happened last night? I can't tell. She looks like she knows everything, and at the same time, like she doesn't know a thing. Images of her naked body come to my mind. Memories of how different parts felt. I'm not even sure that was the body of a woman who's here in front of me. At the time, though, I was 100% sure. She has on a light green silky-looking blouse and a tight beige skirt. There's a sun-silver necklace on her throat, very chic. Like some neatly crafted object, her slim fingers on the desk are beautifully intertwined. "So, do you like this area now?" she asks me. "Do you mean Takamatsu?" "Yes." "I don't know. I haven't seen much of it. Just a few things along the way. This library, of course. A gym, the station, the hotel. Those kinds of places." "Don't you find it boring?" I shake my head. I don't know yet. I haven't had time to get bored, and cities look the same anyway. Why do you ask? "Do you think it's a boring town?" She gave a slight shrug. "When I was young, I did. I was dying to get out, to leave here and go somewhere else, where something special was waiting, where I could find more interesting people." "Interesting people?" Miss Saeki shakes her head slightly. "I was young," she says. "Most young people have that feeling, I suppose. Haven't you?" "No, I never felt that if I go somewhere else, there'll be special things waiting for me. I just wanted to be somewhere else, that's all. Anywhere but there. There. Nakata, Nakano word. There I was born and grew up. At the sound of this name, something flashed across her eyes. At least, it looked like it. As long as you left there, you didn't particularly care where you went, she asks. That's right, I say. Where I went wasn't an issue. I had to get out of there, or else I knew I'd be totally messed up, so I left. She looks down at her hands, resting on the desk, a very detached look in her eyes. Then, very quietly, she says, Well, I left here when I was 20. I felt the same way. I had to leave or else I wouldn't survive. And I was convinced I'd never see this place again as long as I lived. I never considered coming back, but things happened and here I am. Like I'm starting all over again. She turns around and looks out of the window. The clouds covering the sky are the same tone as before, and there isn't any wind to speak of. The whole thing looks as still as the painted background scenery in a movie. Incredible things happen in life, she says. You mean I might go back to where I started? I don't know. That's up to you. Sometime well in the future. But I think where a person is born and dies is very important. You can't choose where you're born, but where you die, you can, to some degree. She says all this in a quiet voice, staring out of the window like she's talking to some imaginary person outside. Remembering I'm here, she turns toward me. I wonder why I'm confessing all these things to you. Because I'm not from around here, and our ages are so different. I suppose so, she says. For 20, maybe 30 seconds, we're lost in our own thoughts. She picks up her cup and takes another sip of coffee. I decide to come right out and say it. Miss Saeki, I have something I need to confess to. She looks at me and smiles. We're exchanging secrets, I see. Mine isn't a secret, just a theory. A theory, she repeats. You're confessing a theory. Yes. Sounds interesting. It's a sequel to what we're talking about, I say. What I mean is, did you come back to this town to die? Like a silvery moon at dawn, I smile. Rises to her lips. Perhaps I did, but it doesn't seem to matter whether you come to a place to live or to die. The things you do every day are about the same. Are you hoping to die? I wonder, she says. I don't know myself. My father was hoping to die. Your father died? Not long ago, I tell her. Very recently, in fact. Why was your father trying to die? I take a deep breath. For a long time, I couldn't figure it out, but now I think I have. After coming here, I finally understand. Why? My father was in love with you, but couldn't get you back. Or maybe from the very beginning, he couldn't really make you his. He knew that, and that's why he wanted to die. And that's also why he wanted his son, your son, too, to murder him. Me, in other words. He wanted me to sleep with you, and my older sister, too. That was his prophecy, of course. He programmed all this inside me. Miss Saeki returns her coffee cup to the saucer with a hard, neutral sound. She looks straight at me, but she's not really seeing me. She's gazing at some void, some blank space somewhere else. Do I know your father? I shake my head. As I told you, it's just a theory. She rests her hands on the desk, one on top of the other. Faint traces of a smile remain. In your theory, then, I'm your mother. That's right, I say. You lived with my father, had me, and then went away, leaving me behind. In the summer, when I just turned 4. So that's your theory. I nod. Which explains why you asked me yesterday whether I have any children. Again, I nod. I told you I couldn't answer that. Couldn't give you a yes or no. I know. So your theory remains speculative. I nod again. That's right. So tell me, how did your father die? He was murdered. You didn't murder him, did you? No, I didn't. I have an alibi. But you're not entirely sure. I shake my head. I'm not sure at all. She lifts the coffee cup again and takes a tiny sip. As if it has no taste. Why did your father put you under that curse? He must have wanted me to take over his will, I say. To desire me, you mean? That's right, I say. Miss Saeki stares into a cup in her hand, then looks up again. So, do you desire me? I give one clear nod. She closes her eyes. I gaze at her closed eyelids for a long time, and though through them I can see the darkness that she's seeing. Odd shapes loom into it, floating up only to disappear. Finally she opens her eyes. You mean, in theory you desire me? No, apart from the theory. I want you, and that does way beyond any theory. You want to have sex with me? I nod. She narrows her eyes like something is shining in them. Have you ever had sex with a girl before? I nod again. Last night with you, I think. But I can't say it out loud. She doesn't remember a thing. Something close to a sigh escapes her lips. Kafka, I know you realize this, but you're 15 and I'm over 50. It's not that simple. We're not talking about that sort of time there. I know you when you were 15, and I'm in love with you at that age. Very much in love. And through her, I'm in love with you. The young girl's still inside you, asleep inside you. Once you go to sleep, though, she comes to life. I've seen it. She closes her eyes once more, her eyelids trembling slightly. I'm in love with you, and that's what's important. I think you understand that. Like someone rising to the surface of the sea from a deep below, she takes a deep breath. She searches for words to say, but they lie beyond her grasp. I'm sorry, Kafka, but would you mind leaving? I'd like to be alone for a while, she says, and close the door on your way out. I nod, stand up, start to go, but something pulls me back. I stop at the door, turn around, and walk across the room to where she is. I reach out and touch her hair. Through the strands, my hand brushes her small ear. I just can't help it. Miss Saeki looks up surprised, and after a moment's hesitation, lays her hand on mine. At any rate, you and your theory are throwing a stone at a target that is very far away. Do you understand that? I nod. I know, but metaphors can reduce the distance. We're not metaphors. I know, I say, but metaphors help eliminate that separates you and me. A faint smile comes to her as she looks up at me. That's the oddest pickup line I've ever heard. You're a lot of odd things going on. But I feel like I'm slowly getting closer to the truth. Actually, getting closer to a metaphorical truth, or metaphorically getting closer to an actual truth. Or maybe they supplement each other. Either way, I don't think I can stand the sadness I feel right now, I tell her. I feel the same way. So, did you come back to this town to die? She shakes her head. To be honest about it, I'm not trying to die. I'm just waiting for death to come. Like sitting on a bench at the station, waiting for the train. And do you know when the train's going to arrive? She takes her head away from mine and touches her eyelids with the tips of her fingers. Kafka, I've worn away so much of my own life, worn myself away. At a certain point, I should have stopped living, but didn't. I knew life was pointless, but I couldn't give up on it. So I ended up just making time, wasting my life in pointless pursuits. I wound up hurting myself, and that made me hurt others around me. That's why I'm being punished now. Why I'm under a kind of curse. I had something to complete, to perfect once, and afterward all I could do was despise myself. That's the curse I can never escape. So I'm not afraid of death. And to answer your question, yes, I have a pretty good idea of when the time is coming. Once more, I take her hand in mine. The scales are shaking, and just a tiny weight would send them tipping to one side or the other. I have to think. I have to decide. I have to take a step forward. Miss Saeki, would you sleep with me? I ask. You mean, if I were your mother in that theory of yours? It's like everything around me is in flux, like it all has a doubled meaning. She ponders this. That might not be true for me, though. For me, things might not be so nuanced. It might be more like all or nothing. And you know which is it? She nods. Do you mind if I ask you a question? What about? Where did you come up with those 2 chords? Chords? The ones in the bridge in Kafka on the Shore. She looks at me. You like them? I nod. I found those chords in an old room, very far away. The door to the room was open then, she says quietly. A room that was far, far away. She closes her eyes and sinks back into memories. Kafka, close the door when you leave, she says. And that's exactly what I do. After we close up the library for the night, Oshima drives me to the seafood restaurant, a little way far away. Though a large window in the restaurant, we can see the night sea. And I think about all the creatures living under the water. Sometimes, you've got to get out and eat some decent food, he tells me. Relax, I don't think the cops have stalked the place out. We both needed a change of scenery. We eat a huge salad and split an order of paella. I'd love to go to Spain someday, Oshima says. Why Spain? To fight in a civil war. But that ended a long time ago. I know that. Lorca died and Hemingway survived, Oshima says. But I still have the right to go to Spain and be a part of the Spanish Civil War. Metaphorically. Exactly, he says, giving me a wry look. A hemophiliac of undetermined sex, who's hardly ever set foot outside Shikoku, isn't about to actually go off to fight in Spain, I would think. We attacked the mound of paella, washing it down with Perrier. Have there been any developments in my father's case? I ask. Nothing to report, really, except for a typical smug memorial piece in the arts section. There hasn't been much of in any papers. The investigation must be stuck. The sad fact is, the arrest rate's been going down steadily these days. Just like the stock market. I mean, the police can't even track down the son who's disappeared. The 15-year-old youth. 15, with a history of violent behavior, Oshima adds, the obsessed young runaway. How about that incident with things falling from the sky? Oshima shakes his head. They're taking a break on that one. Nothing else weird has fallen from the sky, unless you count that award-winning lightning we had 2 days ago. So, things have settled down. It seems like it. Or maybe we're just in the eye of the storm. I nod, pick up a calm, yank out the meat with a fork, then pull the shell on a plate full of empty shells. Are you still in love? Oshima asks me. I nod. How about you? Am I in love, do you mean? I nod again. In other words, you're daring to get personal and ask about the antisocial romance that colors my wrapped, homosexual, gender identity disordered life. I nod. And he follows suit. I have a partner, yes, he admits. He makes a serious face and eats a clam. It's not the kind of passionate, stormy love you find in Puccini, opera, or anything. We keep a careful distance from each other. We don't get together that often, but we do understand each other at a deep, basic level. Understand each other. Whenever Haydn composed, he always made sure to dress formally, even to wearing a powdered wig. I look at him in surprise. What's Haydn got to do with anything? He couldn't compose well unless he did that. How come? I have no idea. That's between Haydn and his wig. Nobody else could understand. Inexplicable, I imagine. I nod. Tell me, when you're alone, do you sometimes think about your partner and feel sad? Of course, he says. It happens sometimes. When the moon turns blue, when birds fly thous, I mean. Why, of course? I ask. Anyone who falls in love is searching for the missing pieces of themselves. So anyone who's in love gets sad when they think of other half. It's like stepping back inside of the room you have fond memories of. One you haven't seen in a long time. It's just a natural feeling. You're not the person who discovered that feeling. So don't go trying to patent it, okay? I lay my fork down and look up. A fond, odd, faraway room. Exactly, Oshima says. He folds his fork straight up for emphasis. Just a metaphor, of course. Miss Saeki comes to the room after 9 that night. I'm sitting at the desk reading a book when I hear golf pull into the parking lot. The door slams shut. Rubber-soled shoes slowly crunch across the parking lot. And finally there's a knock at my door. I open the door and there she is. This time she's wide awake. She has on a pinstriped silk blouse, thin blue jeans, white deck shoes. I've never seen her in pants before. I haven't seen this room in a long time, she says. She stands by the wall and looks at the painting. Or this picture either. Is the place in the painting around here? I ask. Do you like it? I nod. Who painted it? A young artist who boarded that summer with the Kamuras, she says. He wasn't very famous, at least at the time. I've forgotten his name. He was a very friendly person though, and I think he did a good job with the painting. There's something I don't know, powerful about it. I sat beside him the whole time and watched him work. I made all kinds of half-joking suggestions as he painted. We got along well. It was a summer a long time ago. I was 12 then. The boy in the painting was 12 too. It looks like the sea around here. Let's go for a walk, she says. I'll take you there. I walk with her to the shore. We cut through a pine forest and walk down the sandy beach. The clouds are breaking up, and a half moon shines down on the waves. Small waves that barely reach the shore, barely break. She sits down in the spot on the sand, and I sit down next to her, the sand's still faintly warm. Like she's checking the angle, she points to a spot on the shoreline. It was right over there, she says. He painted that spot from here. He put the deck chair over there, had the boy pose in it, and set up his easel right around here. I remember it well. Do you notice how the position of the island is the same in the painting? I follow where she's pointing, and sure enough, it's the same. No matter how long I gaze at it, though, it doesn't look like the place in the painting. I tell her that. It has changed completely, Miss Saeki replies. That was 40 years ago, after all. Things change. A lot of things affect the shoreline: waves, wind, typhoons, sand gets washed away. The truck move in. But this is definitely the spot. I remember what occurred there very well. That was the summer I had my first period too. We sit there, looking at the scenery. The clouds shift and the moonlight dapples the sea. Wind blows through the pine forest, sounding like a crowd of people sweeping the ground at the same time. I scoop up some sand and let it slowly spill out between my fingers. It falls to the beach and, like lost time, becomes part of what's already there. I do this over and over. "What are you thinking about?" Miss Saeki asks me. "About going to Spain," I reply. "What are you going to do there?" "Eat some delicious paella." "That's all?" "And fight in the Spanish Civil War. That ended over 60 years ago." "I know," I tell her. "Lorca died and Hemingway survived." "But you want to be a part of it?" I nod. "Yup. Blow up bridges and stuff. And fall in love with an Ingrid Bergman." "But in reality, I'm here in Takamatsu, and I'm in love with you." "Tough luck." I put my arm around her. You put your arm around her. She leans against you, and a long spell of time passes. "Did you know that I did the exact same thing a long time ago, right in the same spot?" "I know," you tell her. "How do you know that?" Miss Saeki asks, and looks me in the eyes. "I was there then. Blowing up bridges." "Yes, I was there blowing up bridges. Metaphorically, of course." I hold her. You hold her in your arms, draw her close, kiss her. You can feel the strength deserting her body. "We're all dreaming, aren't we?" she says. "All of us are dreaming." "Why did you have to die?" "I couldn't help it," you reply. Together, you walk along the beach, back to the library. You turn off the light in your room, draw the curtains, and without another word, climb into bed and make love. Pretty much the same sort of lovemaking as the night before, but with two differences. After sex, she starts to cry. That's one. She buries her face in the pillow and silently weeps. You don't know what to do. You gently lay a hand on her bare shoulder. You know you should say something, but don't have any idea what. Words have all died in a hollow of time, piling up soundlessly at the dark bottom of the volcanic lake. And this time, as she leaves you, you can hear the engine of her car. That's number 2. She starts the engine, turns it off for a time, like she's thinking about something, then turns the key again and drives out of the parking lot. That blank, silent interval between leaves, you said, so terribly sad. Like fog from the sea, the blankness wends its way into your heart and remains there for a long, long time. Finally, it's a part of you. She leaves behind a damp pillow, wet with her tears. You touch the warmth with your hand and watch the sky outside gradually lighten. Far away, a crow crawls. The earth slowly keeps on turning. But beyond any of those details of the real, there are dreams, and everyone is living in them. Chapter 32. When Nakata woke up at 5 a.m., he saw a big stone right next to his pillow. Hoshino was still sound asleep, on the futon next to his, mouth half open, hair sticking every which way. Chunichi Dragon's cap tossed beside him. His sleeping face had a determined, no matter what, don't dare wake me up look to it. Nakata wasn't particularly surprised to find the stone there. His mind adapted immediately to the new reality, accepted it, didn't question it, why it happened to be there. Figuring out cause and effect was never his strong suit. He sat down formally beside his bed, legs tucked neatly under him, and spent some quality time with the stone, gazing intently at it. Finally, he reached out and like he was stroking a large sleeping cat, touched it. At first, gingerly, with only his fingertips, and when that seemed to save, he ran his entire hand carefully over the whole surface. All the while he rubbed it, he was thinking, or at least had the pensive look of someone thinking. As if reading a map, he ran his hand over every part of the stone, memorizing every bump and cranny, getting a solid sense of it. Then he suddenly reached up and rubbed his short hair, searching, perhaps, for the correlation between the stone and his own head. Finally, he gave what might he have been a sigh, stood up, opened the window, and stuck his face out. All that was visible was the rear of the building next door, a shabby, miserable sort of building, the kind where shabby people spend one shabby day after another doing their shabby work, the kind of fallen from grace sort of building you find in any city, the kind of Charles Dickens would spend 10 pages describing. The clouds floating above the building were like hard clumps of dirt from a vacuum cleaner no one ever cleaned, or maybe more like all the contradictions of the Third Industrial Revolution condensed and set afloat in the sky. Regardless, it was going to rain soon. Nakata looked down and spied a skinny black cat, tail alert, patrolling the top of the narrow wall between the two buildings. "There is going to be lightning today," he called out, but the cat didn't appear to hear him. Didn't even turn around, just continued its languid walk and disappeared in the shadows of the building. Nakata set off down the hall, plastic bag with toilet kit inside at hand, to the communal sinks. He washed his face, brushed his teeth, and shaved with a safety razor. Each operation took time. He carefully washed his face, taking his time, carefully brushed his teeth, taking his time, carefully shaved, taking his time. He trimmed his nose hairs with a pair of scissors, straightened up his eyebrows, cleaned out his ears. He was the type who took his time no matter what he did, but this morning he took everything at an even slower pace than usual. No one else was up washing his face at this early hour, and it was still a while before breakfast was ready. Hoshino didn't look like he'd be getting up anytime soon. With the whole place to himself, Nakata looked in the mirror, leisurely preparing for the day, and pictured the faces of all the cats he'd seen in the book in the library 2 days before. Unable to read, he didn't know the names of the cats, but a clear picture of each and every cat's face was etched in his memory. "There really are a lot of cats in the world, that's for sure," he said as he cleaned out his ears with a Q-tip. His first ever visit to the library had made him painfully aware of how little he knew. The amount of things he didn't know about the world was infinite. The infinite, by definition, has no limits, and thinking about it gave him a mild migraine. He gave up and turned his thoughts back to cats of the world. How nice it would be, he thought, to be able to talk with each and every cat in there. There must be all kinds of cats in the world, all with different ways of thinking and talking. Would foreign cats speak in foreign languages, he wondered. But this was another difficult subject, and again his head began to throb. After washing up, he went to the toilet and took care of business as usual. This didn't take as long as the other ablutions. Finished, he took his plastic bag with the toilet kit inside back to the room. Hoshino was sound asleep, exactly as he'd left him. Nakata picked up the discarded aloha shirt and jeans, folding them up neatly. He set them down on the top of each other next to Hoshino's futon, adding the Chunichi Dragon's baseball cap on top like a summary title given to a motley collection of ideas. He took off his yukata robe and put on his usual trousers and a shirt, then rubbed his hands together and took a deep breath. He sat down again in front of the stone, gazing at it for a while before hesitantly reaching out to touch it. "There is going to be thunder today," he pronounced, to no one in particular. He may have been addressing the stone. He punctuated this with a couple of nods. Nakata was over next to the window, running through the exercise routine, when Hoshino finally woke up. Humming the radio exercise music quietly to himself, Nakata moved in time to the tune. Hoshino squinted at his watch. It was just after 8. He craned his neck to make sure the stone was where he'd put it. In the light, the stone looked much bigger and rougher than he'd remembered. "So I wasn't dreaming after all," he said. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" Nakata asked. "The stone," Hoshino said. "The stone's right there. It wasn't a dream." "We have the stone," Nakata said simply, still in the midst of his exercises, making it sound like some central proposition of 19th century German philosophy. "It's a long story, though, Gramps, about how the stone got to be there." Yes, Nakata thought that might be the case. "Anyway," Hoshino said, sitting up in the bed and sighing deeply. "It doesn't matter. The important thing is, it's there. To make a long story short." "We have the stone," Nakata repeated. "That's what matters." Hoshino was about to respond, but suddenly noticed how famished he was. "Hey, what'd you say we grab some breakfast?" Nakata is quite hungry. After breakfast, as he was drinking tea, Hoshino said, "So what are you going to do with the stone?" What should Nakata do with it? "Give me a break," Hoshino said, shaking his head. "You said you had to find that stone, so that's why I managed to come up with it last night. Don't hit me now with this gee whiz. What should I do with it stuff, okay?" "Yes, you are right, but to tell the truth, I don't know yet what I'm supposed to do with it." "That's a problem." "A problem indeed," Nakata replied, though you'd never know it from his expression. "So, if you spend some time thinking about it, you'll figure out what to do." "I think so. It takes Nakata much longer to do things than other people." "Okay, but listen here, Mr. Nakata." "Yes, Mr. Hoshino?" "I don't know who gave it to that name, but since it's called the entrance stone, I'm guessing it's gotta be the entrance to something a long time ago. Don't you think? There might be some legend or explanation about it." "Yes, that must be the case." "But you have no idea what kind of entrance we're talking about here?" "No, not yet. I used to talk with cats all the time, but I've never spoken to a stone." "Doesn't sound like it'd be too easy." "It's very different from talking with a cat." "But still, ripping that stone off from the shrine. You sure we won't be cursed or something? That's really bothering me. Taking it's one thing, but dealing with it now that we have it could be a total pain in the butt. Colonel Sanders told me there wouldn't be any curse, but I can't totally trust the guy. You know what I mean?" "Colonel Sanders?" "There's an old guy by that name. The guy on the Kentucky Fried Chicken ads. With the white suit, beard, stupid glasses. You don't know what I mean?" "I am very sorry, but I don't believe I know that person." "You don't know Kentucky Fried Chicken? That's kind of unusual. Well, whatever. The old guy's an abstract concept anyway. He's not human, not a god or a Buddha. He doesn't have any shape, but has to take on some sort of appearance, so he just happened to choose the colonel." Nakata looked perplexed and rubbed his salt and pepper hair. I don't understand. Well, to tell you the truth, I don't get it either, though I'm the one spouting off, Hoshino said. Anyhow, this weird old guy suddenly pops out of nowhere and rattles off all those things to me. Long story short, the old guy helped me out so I could locate the stone, and I lugged it back here. I'm not trying to win your sympathy or anything, but it was a long, hard night, I can tell you. What I'd really like to do right now is hand the whole thing to you and let you take over. I will. That was quick. Mr. Hoshino, Nakata said. What? There's going to be a lot of thunder soon. Let's wait for that. You're telling me the thunder is going to do something to help with the stone? I don't know for sure, but I'm starting to get that feeling. Thunder, huh? Sounds kinda cool. Okay, we'll wait and see what happens. When they got back to their room, Hoshino flopped face down on the futon and switched on the TV. Nothing was on except a bunch of variety shows targeted at housewives, but since there was no other way of killing time, he kept watching, giving a running critique of everything on the screen. Nakata, meanwhile, sat on the front of the stone, gazing at it, rubbing it, occasionally mumbling. Hoshino didn't catch what he was saying. For all he knew, the old man might actually be talking to the stone. After a couple of hours, Hoshino ran out to a nearby convenience store and came back with a sack full of milk and sweet rolls the two of them had for lunch. While they were eating, the maid showed up to clean the room, but Hoshino told her not to bother. They were fine. You're not going out anywhere? She asked. Nope, he answered. We've got something to do here. Because there's going to be a thunder, Nakata added. Thunder, I see, the maid said dubiously before she left, looking like she'd rather not have anything to do with his weird pair. Around noon, thunder rumbled duffly off in the distance, and, as if waiting for a signal, it started sprinkling. Unimpressive thunder, a lazy dwarf trampling for a drum. Before long, though, the raindrops grew larger, and it was soon a regular downpour, wrapping the world in a wet, stuffy smell. Once the thunder started, the two sat down across from each other, the stone between them, like Indians passing the peace pipe. Nakata was still mumbling to himself, rubbing the stone or his head. Hoshino puffed the Marlboros and watched. Mr. Hoshino, Nakata said. What's up? Would you stay with me for a while? Sure, I'm not going anywhere in this rain. There is a chance something straight might happen. Are you kidding me? Hoshino began. Everything has been strange enough already. Mr. Hoshino. Yes? All of a sudden, I was wondering, what am I anyway? What is Nakata? Hoshino pondered this. That's a tough one, a little out of left field. I mean, I don't even know what I am, so I'm not the guy to ask. Thinking isn't exactly my thing, you know? But I know you're an okay, honest guy. You're out of kilter big time, but you're somebody I trust. That's why I came with all the way to Shikoku. I may not be so bright either, but I do have an eye for people. Mr. Hoshino? Yeah? It's not just that I'm dumb. Nakata's empty inside. I finally understand that. Nakata's like a library without a single book. It wasn't always like that. I used to have books inside me. For a long time I couldn't remember, but now I can. I used to be normal, just like everybody else, but something happened and I ended up like a container with nothing inside. Yeah, but if you look at it like that, we're all pretty much empty, don't you think? You eat, take a dump, do your crummy job for your lousy pay, and get laid occasionally, if you're lucky. What else is there? Still, interesting things do happen in life. Like with us now. I'm not sure why. My grandpa used to say that things never work out like you think they will. But that's what makes life interesting. And what makes sense. If the Shinichi Dragons won every single game, who'd ever watch baseball? You liked your grandfather a lot, didn't you? Yes, I did. If it hadn't been for him, I don't know what would have happened to me. He made me feel like I should try and make something of myself. He made me feel, connected? That's why I quit the motorcycle gang and joined the self-defense force. Before I knew it, I wasn't getting in trouble anymore. But, Mr. Hoshino, Nakata doesn't have anybody. Nothing. I'm not connected at all. I can't read, and my shadow's only half of what it should be. Everybody has their shortcomings. Mr. Hoshino? Yeah? If I'd been my normal self, I think I would have lived a very different kind of life. Like my two younger brothers. I would have gone to college, worked in a company, gotten married and had a family. Driven a big car, played golf on my days off. But I wasn't normal, so that's why I'm the Nakata I am today. It's too late to do it over. I understand that, but still, even for a short time, I'd like to be a normal Nakata. Up until now, there was never anything in particular I wanted to do. I always did what people told me as best I could. Maybe that just became a habit. But now, I want to go back to being normal. I want to be a Nakata with his own ideas, his own meaning. Hoshino sighed. If that's what you want, then go for it. Not that I have a clue what a normal Nakata's like. Nakata doesn't either. I just hope it works out. I'll be praying for you. That you can be normal again. Before I get back to being normal though, there are some things I have to take care of. Like what? Like Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker, Hoshino said. Yeah, you mentioned that before. You mean the whiskey guy? Yes, I went to the police right away and told them about him. I knew I had to report to the governor, but they wouldn't listen. So I have to find a solution on my own. I have to take care of that before I can be a normal Nakata again, if that is possible. I don't really get it, but I guess you're saying that you need the stone to do whatever it is you need to do. That's right. I have to get the other half of my shadow back. But this time the thunder was deafening. Lightning zigzagged across the sky, followed a moment later by the roar of thunder. The air shook, and the loose wind wrappers rattled nervously. Dark clouds capped the whole sky, and it got so dark inside they could barely make out each other's faces. They left the light off, however. They were still seated as before, with a stone between them. The rain was lashing down, so hard it felt suffocating, just to look at it. Each flash of lightning lit up the room for an instant. They didn't say anything for a while. Okay, but why do you have anything to do with the stone, Mr. Nakata? Hoshino asked when the thunder had died down a bit. Why does it have to be you? Because I'm the one who's gone in and come out again. I don't follow you. I left here once and came back again. It happened when Japan was in a big war. The lid came open and I left here. By chance I came back. That's why I'm not normal. And my shadow's only half of what it was. But then I could talk with cats, though I can't do it well anymore. I can also make things fall from the sky. Like those leeches. Yes. A pretty unique talent, that's for sure. That's right. Not everybody can do it. And that's because you went out and came back again. I guess you really are pretty extraordinary. After I came back, I wasn't normal anymore. I couldn't read, and I've never touched a woman. That's hard to believe. Mr. Hoshino. Yeah. I'm scared. As I told you, I'm completely empty. Do you know what that means to be completely empty? Hoshino shook his head. I guess not. Being empty is like a vacant house. An unlocked vacant house. Anybody can come in anytime they want. That's what scares me the most. I can make things rain from the sky, but most of the time I don't have any idea what I'm going to make rain next. If it were 10,000 knives, or a huge bomb, or poison gas, I don't know what I'll do. I could say I'm sorry to everybody, but that wouldn't be enough. You got that right, Hoshino said. Just apologizing wouldn't cut it. Leeches are bad enough, but those things are even worse. Johnny Walker went inside Nakata. He made me do things I didn't want to. Johnny Walker used me, but I didn't have enough strength to fight it. Because I don't have anything inside me. Which explains why I want to go back to being a normal Nakata. One with substance. That's exactly right. I'm not very bright, but I could build furniture, and I did it day after day. I liked making things. Desks, chairs, chests. It's nice to make things with nice shapes. Those years I made furniture, I never thought about wanting to be normal again, and there wasn't anyone I knew who tried to get inside me. Nakata never felt afraid or anything. But after meeting Johnny Walker, I got very afraid. So, what did this Johnny Walker make you do after he got inside you? A loud rumble rippled to the sky, and the lightning was close by the sound of it. Hoshino's eardrums were stinging from the roar. Nakata inclined his head slightly to one side, listening carefully, slowly rubbing the surface of the stone for a while. He made me shed blood. Blood? Yes, but it didn't stick to Nakata's hands. Hoshino pondered this for a while, puzzled. Anyway, once you open the entrance stone, all sorts of things will naturally settle back where they're meant to be, right? Like water flowing from high places to low places. Nakata considered this. It might not be that easy. Nakata's job is to find the entrance stone and open it. What happens after that, I'm afraid I don't know. Okay, but why is the stone in Shikoku? The stone is everywhere, not just in Shikoku. And it doesn't have to be a stone. I don't get it. If it's everywhere, then you could have done it all back at home, in Nakata. Nakano. That would have saved a lot of time and effort. Nakata rubbed a palm over his close-cropped hair. That's a hard question. I've been listening to the stone for a while now, but I can't understand it all that well yet. But I do think both of us had to come here. We had to cross a big bridge. It wouldn't have worked in Nakano world. Can I ask you something else? Yes. If you do open the entrance stone here, is something amazing going to happen? Like, is what's his name, that genie, going to pop out like an Aladdin? Or a prince that's been turned into a frog will French kiss me? Or else will be eaten alive by Martians? Something might happen, but then again, maybe nothing. I haven't opened it yet, so I don't know. You can't know until you open it. But it might be dangerous, huh? Yes, exactly. Jeez. Hoshino pulled a Marlboro out of his pocket and lit it. My grandpa used to always tell me that my bad point was running off with people I didn't know without thinking what I was doing. I guess I must have always done that. The child's the father of the man. Like they say, Anyhow, there's nothing I can do about it now. I've come all this way and gone to all the trouble of locating the stone, so I can't just head home without seeing it through. We know it might be dangerous, but what the hell? Why don't we open it and see what happens? At least, it will make a great story for the grandkids. Nakata has a favor to ask you, Mr. Hoshino. What's that? Could you pick up the stone? No problem. It's a lot heavier than when you brought it. I know I'm not a Schwarzenegger, but I'm stronger than I look. In the SDF, I got second place in our unit's arm wrestling contest. Plus, I've got my back problems. So, I can give it everything I've got. Hoshino stood up, grabbed the stone in both hands and tried to lift it. The stone didn't budge an inch. You're right. It's a lot heavier, he said, gasping. A while ago, lifting it was no problem. Now it feels like it's nailed to the floor. It's the valuable entrance stone, so it can't be moved easily. If it could, that would be a problem. I suppose so. Right then, a few irregular flashes of light ripped through the sky, and a series of thunderclaps shook the earth to its core. It's like somebody just opened the lid to hell, Hoshino thought. One final clap of thunder boomed nearby, and suddenly there was a thick, suffocating silence. The air was damp and stagnant, with a hint of something suspicious, as if countless ears were floating in the air, waiting to pick up a trace of some conspiracy. The two men were frozen, wrapped in the midday darkness. Suddenly, the wind picked up again, lashing rain against the window. Thunder rumbled, but not as violently as before. The center of the storm had passed the city. Hoshino looked up and swept the room with his eyes. Everything seemed strangely cold and distant. The four walls were even more blank than before. The Marlboro butt in the ashtray had turned to ash. He swallowed and brushed the silence from his ears. Hey, Mr. Nakata. What is it, Mr. Hoshino? I feel like I'm having a bad dream. Well, at least we are having the same dream. You're right, Hoshino said, and scratched his earlobe in resignation. Right you are. Right as rain. Rain, rain, go away. Come again another day. Anyway, that makes me feel better. Then he stood up once more, to try to move the stone. He took a deep breath, grabbed it, and focused all his strength in his hands. With a low grunt, he managed to lift the stone an inch or two. You moved it a little, Nakata said. So, we know it's not nailed down, but I've got to move it more than that, I guess. You need to flip it completely over, like a pancake. Nakata nodded. That's right, pancakes are one of Nakata's favorites. Glad to hear it. So they have pancakes in hell, huh? Anyway, let me give it one more try. I think I can flip this thing over. Hoshino closed his eyes and summoned up every ounce of strength, concentrating it on this one action. This is it, he told himself. Now or never. He got a good grip, carefully tightened it, then took a huge breath, let out a gut-wrenching yell, and all at once lifted the stone, holding it in the air at a 45-degree angle. That was the limit of his strength. Somehow he was able to hold it in that position. He gasped, his whole body aching, his bones and muscles and nerves screaming in pain, but he wasn't about to give up. He took in one last deep breath and gave out a battle cry, but couldn't hear his own voice. He had no idea what he was saying. His eyes shut tight. He managed to drag out a strength he never knew he had. Strength that should have been beyond him. Lack of oxygen made everything go white. One after another, his nerves snapped, like popping fuses. He couldn't see or hear a thing, or even think. There wasn't enough air. Still, he inched the stone upward and, with a final yell, tipped it over. He lost his grip, and the weight of the stone itself flipped it over. A massive thud rattled the room, as if the whole building was shaking. The recoil sent Hoshino tumbling backward. He lay there, sprawled face up on the tatami, gasping for air, his head filled with sort of mud whirling round and round. I don't think, he thought, I'll ever lift something this heavy again as long as I live. Later on, though, it turned out that his prediction was overly optimistic. Mr. Hoshino. What? The entrance opened up, thanks to you. You know something, Gramps? I mean, Mr. Nakata. What is it? Face up, eyes still shut, Hoshino took another long deep breath and exhaled. It better have opened up, otherwise I killed myself for nothing. Chapter 33. I get the library all ready to open up before Oshima arrives. Vacuum all the floors, wipe the windows, clean the restroom, wipe off the chairs and desks, spray the banister, polish it up nicely, carefully dust the stained glass on the landing, sweep the garden, switch on the AC in the reading room, and the storeroom's dehumidifier. Make coffee, sharpen pencils. A deserted library in the morning, there's something about it that really gets to me. All possible words and ideas are there, resting quietly. I want to do what I can to preserve this place. Keep it neat and tidy. Sometimes I come to a halt and gaze at all the silent books on the stacks, reach out and touch the spines of a few. At 10:30, as always, the Mazda Miata roars into the parking lot and Oshima appears, looking a little sleepy. We chat for a while, till it's time to open up. If it's okay, I'd like to go out for a while. I tell him right after we open up. Where to? I need to go to the gym and work out. I haven't gotten an exercise for a while. That isn't the only reason. Miss Saeki comes in to work late in the morning, and I don't want to run into her. I need some time to get my head together before I see her again. Oshima looks at me and, after a pause, nods. Watch out, though. I don't want to humpback you, but you can't be too careful, okay? Don't worry, I'll be careful, I assure him. Backpack slung from one shoulder, I board the train. At Takamatsu Station, I take a bus to the fitness club. I change into my gym clothes in the locker room, then do some circuit training, plugged into my Walkman. Prince blasting away. It's been a while and my muscles complain, but I manage. It's my body's normal reaction, muscles screaming out, resisting the extra burden put on them. Listening to Little Red Corvette, I try to soothe the reaction, suppress it. I take a deep breath, hold it, exhale. Inhale, hold, exhale. Even breathing, over and over. One by one, I push my muscles to the limit. I'm sweating like crazy. My shirt's soaked and heavy. I have to go over to the cooler a few times to gulp down water. I go, though, the machines in the usual order. My mind filled with Miss Saeki. About the sex we had. I try to clear my head, blank everything out, but it's not easy. I focus on my muscles, absorb myself in the routine. The same machines as always, same weights, same number of reps. Prince is singing Sexy Motherfucker now. The end of my penis is still a bit sore and stings a little when I take a leap. The tip's red. My flesh from the foreskin cock is still plenty young and tender. Condensed sexual fantasies, rinsed slippery wars. Quotes from all kinds of books. the whole confused mass of swirls around my brain, and my head feels like it's about to burst. I take a shower, change into fresh underwear, and take the bus back to the station. Hungry, I duck inside a diner to have a quick meal. As I'm eating, I realize this is where I ate on my first day in Takamatsu, which gets me wondering how many days I've been here. It's been a week or so since I started staying at the library, so I must have gotten to Shikoku about 3 weeks ago. I have some tea after I'm finished eating and watch the people hustling back and forth in front of the station. They're all headed somewhere. If I wanted to, I could join them. Take a train to some other place, throw away everything here, head off somewhere I've never been, start from scratch, like turning a new page in a notebook. I could go to Hiroshima, Fukuoka, wherever. Nothing's keeping me here. I'm 100% free. Everything I need to get by for a while is in my backpack. Clothes, toilet kit, sleeping bag. I've hardly touched the cash I took from my father's study, but I know I can't go anywhere. But you can't go anywhere, you know that very well, the boy named Kraus says. You have Miss Saeki, came inside her so many times. And she took it all. Your penis is still stinging, still remembering how it felt to be inside her. One of the places that's just for you. You think of the library, the tranquil, silent books lining the stacks. You think of Oshima, your room, Kafka on the shore, hanging on the wall. The 15-year-old girl gazing at the painting. You shake your head. There's no way you can leave here. You aren't free. But is that what you really want? To be free? Inside the station, I pass the patrolmen making their rounds, but they don't pay me any mind. Seems like every other guy I pass is some tanned kid my age, shouldering a backpack. And I'm just one of them, melting into the scenery. No need to get all jumpy. Act natural, and nobody will notice me. I jump on the little 2-car train and return to the library. Hey, you're back? Oshima says. He looks at my backpack, dumbfounded. My word, do you always lug around so much luggage with you? You're a regular Linus. I boil some water and have a cup of tea. Oshima's twirling his usual long, freshly sharpened pencil. Where his pencils wind up when they get too short, I have no idea. The backpack is like your symbol of freedom, he comments. I guess so, I say. Having an object that symbolizes freedom might make a person happier than actually getting the freedom it represents. Sometimes, I say. Sometimes, he repeats. You know, if they had a contest for the world's shortest replies, you'd win hands down. Perhaps. Perhaps, Oshima says, as if fed up. Perhaps most people in the world aren't trying to be free, Kafka. They just think they are. It's all an illusion. If they really were set free, most people would be in a real bind. You'd better remember that. People actually prefer not being free. Including you. Yeah, I prefer being unfree too. Up to a point. Jean-Jacques Rousseau defined civilization as when people build fences. A very perspective observation. And it's true. All civilization is a product of a fenced-in lack of freedom. The Australian Aborigines are the exception, though. They managed to maintain a fenceless civilization until the 17th century. They're dyed-in-the-wool free. They go where they want, when they want, doing what they want. Their lives are a literal journey. Walkabout is a perfect metaphor for their lives. When the English came and built fences to pen in their cattle, the Aborigines couldn't fathom it. and ignorant to the end of the principle at work, they were classified as dangerous and antisocial, and were driven away, to the outback. So, I wanted to be careful. The people who build high, strong fences are the ones who survive in the best. You deny that reality only at the risk of being driven into the wilderness yourself. I go back to my room and lay down my backpack. Next, I head to the kitchen, brew up some coffee, and take it to Miss Saeki's room. Metal tray in both hands, I carefully walk up each step, the old floorboards creaking. On the landing, I step through a rainbow of brilliant colors from the stained glass. Miss Saeki sitting at her desk, writing. I put down the coffee, and she looks up and asks me to sit down in my usual chair. Today, she has on a cafe au lait colored shirt over a black t-shirt. Her hair is pinned back, and she's wearing a pair of small pearl earrings. She doesn't say anything for a while. She's looking over what she's just written. Nothing in her expression looks out of the ordinary. She screws on the cap of her fountain pen and lays it on top of her writing paper. She spreads her fingers, checking for ink stains. Sunday afternoon sunlight is shining through the window. Somebody's outside in the garden, talking. Mr. Oshima told me you went to the gym, she says, studying my face. That's right, I say. What kind of exercise do you do there? I use the machines and the free weights, I reply. Anything else? I shake my head. Kind of lonely type of sport, isn't it? I nod. I imagine you want to be stronger. You have to be strong to survive, especially in my case. Because you're all alone. Nobody's going to help me. At least no one has up until this point. So, I have to make it on my own. I have to get stronger, like a stray crow. That's why I gave myself the name Kafka. That's what Kafka means in Czech. You know, crow. She says, mildly impressed. So, you're a crow. That's right, I say. That's right, the boy named Crow says. There must be a limit to that kind of lifestyle though, she says. You can't use that strength as a protective wall around you. There's always going to be something stronger that can overcome that fortress, at least in principle. Strength itself becomes your morality. Miss Saeki smiles. You catch on quickly. The strength I'm looking for isn't the kind where you win or lose. I'm not after a wall that'll repel power coming up from outside. What I want is the kind of strength to be able to absorb that outside power, to stand up to it. The strength to quietly endure things, unfairness, misfortune, sadness, mistakes, misunderstandings. That's got to be the most difficult strength of all, to make your own. I know. Her smile deepens 1 degree. You seem to know everything. I shake my head. That is not true. I'm only 15, and there are plenty of things I don't know. I should know them, but I don't. I don't know anything about you, for one thing. She picks up the coffee cup and takes a sip. There's nothing that you have to know. Nothing inside me you need to know. Do you remember my theory? Of course, she says. But that's your theory, not mine. So, I have no responsibility for it, right? Exactly. The person who comes up with a theory is the one who has to prove it, I say. Which leads me to a question. About? You told me you'd published a book about people who'd been struck by lightning. That's right. Is it still available? She shakes her head. They didn't print that many copies to begin with. It went out of print a long time ago, and I imagine any leftover copies were destroyed. I don't even have a copy. Like I said before, nobody was interested. Why were you interested in that topic? I'm not sure. I guess there was something symbolic about it. Or maybe I just wanted to keep myself busy. So I set a goal that kept me running away around and my mind occupied. I can't recall now what the original motivation was. I came up with the idea and just started researching it. I was a writer then, with no money worries and plenty of free time. So I could mostly do whatever sparked my interest. Once I got into it though, the topic itself was fascinating, meeting all kinds of people, hearing all kinds of stories. If it weren't for that project, I probably would have withdrawn even further from reality and ended up completely isolated. When my father was young, he worked at a caddy at a golf course and was hit by lightning. He was lucky to survive. The guy with him didn't make it. A lot of people were killed by lightning on golf courses, big, wide open spaces with almost nowhere to take shelter, and lightning loves golf clubs. Is your father also named Tamura? Yes, and I think he was about your age. She shakes her head. I don't remember anybody named Tamura. I didn't interview anybody by that name. I don't say anything. That's part of your theory, isn't it? That your father and I met while I was researching the book, and as a result you were born. Yes. Well, that puts an end to it, doesn't it? That never happened. Your theory doesn't stand up. Not necessarily, I say. What do you mean? Before I don't believe everything you're telling me. Why not? Well, you immediately said you'd never interviewed anybody called Tamura without even giving it any thought. 20 years is a long time, and you must have interviewed quite a number of people. I don't think you'd be able to recall so quickly whether one of them was or wasn't named Tamura. She shakes her head and takes another sip of coffee. A faint smile springs to her lips. Kafka, She stops looking for the right words. I wait for her to find them. I feel like things are starting to change around me, she says. How so? I can't really say, but something is happening. The air pressure, the way sounds reverberate, the reflection of light, how bodies move and time passes. It's all transforming, bit by bit. It's like each small change is a drop that's steadily building up into a stream. She picks up her black Mont Blanc pen, looks at it, puts it back where it was, then looks straight at me. What happened between us in your room last night is probably part of that flow. I don't know if what we did last night was right or not, but at the time I decided not to force myself to judge anything. If the flow is there, I figured, I'd just let it carry me along where it wanted. Can I tell you what I think? Go right ahead. I think you're trying to make up for lost time. She thinks about it for a while. You may be right, she says, but how do you know that? Because I'm doing the same thing. Making up for the lost time. Yes, I say. A lot of things were stolen from my childhood. Lots of important things. And now I want to have them back. In order to keep on living. I nod. I have to. People need a place they can go back to. There's still time to make it, I think. For me and for you. She closes her eyes and tends her fingers on the top of her desk, like she's resigned to it. She opens her eyes again. Who are you? She asks. And why do you know so much about everything? You tell her. She must know who you are. I'm Kafka on the shore, you say. Your lover, and your son, the boy named Crow, and the two of us can't be free. We're caught up in the whirlpool, pulled beyond time. Somewhere, we were struck by lightning, but not the kind of lightning you can see or hear. That night, you make love again. You listen as the blank within her is filled. It's a faint sound, like fine sand, on the shore crumbling in the moonlight. You hold your breath, listening. You're inside your theory now. Then you're outside, and inside again, then outside. You inhale, hold it, exhale. Inhale, hold it, exhale. Prince sings on, like some mollusk in your head. The moon rises, the tide comes in. Sea water flows into a river. A branch of the dogwood just outside the window trembles nervously. You hold her close. She buries her face in your chest. You feel her breath against your bare skin. She traces your muscles one by one. Finally, she gently licks your swollen penis, as if healing it. You come again in her mouth. She swallows it down, as if every drop is precious. You kiss her vagina, touching every soft, warm spot with your tongue. You become someone else there, something else. You are somewhere else. There's nothing inside me you need to know, she says. Until Monday morning dawns, you hold each other, listening to the time passing by. Chapter 36. The massive bank of thunderclouds crossed the city at a lethargic pace, letting loose a flurry of lightning bolts, as if probing every nook and cranny of long-lost morality, finally dwindling to a faint, angry echo from the eastern sky. And right then, the violent rain came to a sudden halt, followed by an unearthly silence. Hoshino stood up and opened the window to let some air in. The storm clouds had vanished, the sky covered once more by a thin membrane of pale clouds. All the buildings were wet, the moist cracks in their wall dark, like old people's veins. Water dripped off power lines and formed puddles on the ground. Birds flew out from where they'd sought shelter, chirping loudly as they whined for the bugs that were out themselves now that the storm had abated. Hoshino rotated his neck from side to side a couple of times, checking out his spine. He gave his one big stretch, sat down beside the window and gazed outside, then pulled out his pack of Marlboros and lit up. You know though, Mr. Nakata, after all that effort to turn that stone over and open the entrance, nothing out of the ordinary happened. No fog appeared, no demons, nothing strange at all. Which is fine by me, of course. The strange was set with all that noisy thunder. But I gotta tell you, I'm kind of disappointed. He didn't get a reply, so he turned around. Nakata was leaning forward with both hands on the floor and his eyes closed. The old man looked like a feeble bug. What's the matter? Are you all right? Hoshino asked. I am sorry. I just seem to be a little tired. Nakata doesn't feel so well. I'd like to lie down and sleep for a while. Nakata's face did look awfully pale. His eyes were sunken, his fingers trembling. Just a few hours was all it took, it seemed, for him to have aged terribly. Okay, I'll lay out on a futon for you. Feel free to sleep as much as you want, Hoshino said. But you're sure you're okay? Does your stomach hurt? Do you feel like you're gonna hurl? Any ringing in your ears? Or maybe you have to take a tum? Should I get a doctor? Do you have insurance? Yes, the governor gave me an insurance card, and I keep it safe in my bag. That's good, Hoshino said, dragging the futon out of the closet and spreading it out. I know this isn't the time to go into details, but it isn't the governor of Tokyo who gave you the card. It's the national health card, so it's the Japanese government that issued it to you. I don't know all that much about it, but I'm sure that's the case. The governor himself isn't looking after every little detail of your life, okay? So forget about him for a while. Nakata understands. The governor didn't give me the insurance card. I'll try to forget about him for a while. Okay, I don't think I need a doctor. If I can get some more sleep, I should be alright. Wait a sec. So, you're not going to pull one of those 36-hour marathons, are you? I don't know. I don't decide how long I'm going to sleep, and then stick that to that. Well, I guess that makes sense, Hoshino admitted. Nobody does that. Okay, just sleep as long as you like. It's been a rough day. All that thunder plus talking with a stone, right? And that entrance thing opening up? Not something you see every day, that's for sure. You had to use your head a lot, so you must be tired. Don't worry about anything. Just relax and catch some shut-eye. Let old Hoshino handle the rest. Much obliged. I'm always putting you out, aren't I? Nakata can never thank you enough for all you've done. If you hadn't been with me, I won't have known what to do. And you have your own important work to do. Yeah, I guess so, Hoshino said in a gloomy voice. So many things had happened, he'd completely forgotten about his job. Now that you mention it, I really should be getting back to work soon. The boss is blowing a gasket as we speak, I'll bet. I'd phoned him and said I had to take a few days off to take care of something, but haven't checked in since. Once I get back, he'll really let me have it. He lit up a fresh Marlboro, leisurely exhaling the smoke. He stared at a crow perched on top of the telephone pole and made silly faces at it. But who cares? He can say what he likes. Blow steam out of his ears for all I care. Look, I've been pulling more than my weight for years, working my tail off. Hey, Hoshino, we're short-handed, so how about making a night run to Hiroshima? Okay, boss. I'm on it. Always did what they told me to do, never complained. Thanks to which my bag got shot to hell. If you didn't fix it, for me, things would have gone from bad to worse. I'm only in my mid-20s, so why should I ruin my health over some crummy job, right? That's wrong with a few days off now and then. But you know, Mr. Nakata, Hoshino suddenly realized the old man was sound asleep. Eyes shut tight, face pointed toward the ceiling, lips firmly pressed together. Nakata was breathing peacefully. The flipped-over stone lay near his pillow. Man, I've never seen someone fall asleep as fast as him, Hoshino thought admiringly. With time on his hands, he stretched out and watched some television, but he couldn't stand any of the insipid afternoon programs, so he decided to go out. He'd run out of clean underwear and needed to buy some. He detested washing clothes. Better to buy some cheap underpants, he always figured, than bother with washing the old scrubby ones. He went to the front of the desk of the inn to pay for the next day and told them his companion was asleep and they weren't to wake him up. Not that you could if you tried, he added. He wandered down the streets, sniffing the post-train scent in the air, dressed in his usual dragon's cap, green-tinted Ray-Bans, and aloha shirt. He picked up a newspaper at a kiosk at a station and checked how the dragons were doing. They lost to Hiroshima in an away game. They scanned the movie schedule and decided to see the latest Jackie Chan film. The timing was perfect. He asked directions at the police box and found out it was close by, so he walked. He thought, bought his ticket, went inside and watched the movie, munching on peanuts. When he got out of the movie, it was already evening. He wasn't all that hungry, but since he couldn't think of anything else to do, he decided to have some dinner. He popped into a place nearby and ordered sushi and beer. He was more tired than he realized, and only finished half a beer. That makes sense, though, he thought. Lifting that heavy stone, of course. I'm beat. I feel like I'm the oldest of the three little pigs. All the mean old wolves gotta do is huff and puff, and I'll be blasted all the way to Okayama. He left the sushi bar and happened to run across the pachinko place. Before he knew it, he was down $20. He figured it just wasn't his day, so he gave up on pachinko and wandered around. He remembered he still hadn't bought any underwear. Damn, that was the whole point of going out, he told himself. He went into a discount store in the shopping district and bought underpants, wide t-shirts and socks. Now he could finally toss his dirty underwear. He decided it was about time for a new aloha shirt and scoured a few shops looking for one. Only to conclude that the pickings in Takamatsu were pretty slim. Summer and winter alike, he always wore aloha shirts. But that didn't mean just any aloha shirt would do. He stopped at a nearby bakery and bought some bread, in case Nakata woke up hungry in the middle of the night, as well as a small carton of orange juice. Next, he went to a bank and used the ATM to withdraw $500. Checking his balance, he found there was still quite a lot left. These past few years, had been so busy that he'd hardly have time to spend any money. By this time, it was completely dark, and he had a sudden yearning for a cup of coffee. He looked around, spotting a sign for a cafe just off the main drag. It turned out to be the kind of old-fashioned coffee shop you don't find much anymore. He went inside, eased back onto a soft, comfortable chair, and ordered a cup. Chamber music filtered out of these solid, British-made walnut speakers. Hoshino was the only customer. He sank back in his chair and, for the first time in quite a while, felt completely at ease. Everything in the shop was calming, natural, easy to feel comfortable with. The coffee, served in a fancy cup, was rich and delicious. Hoshino closed his eyes, breathing in quietly, and listened to the intertwinings of strings of piano. He'd hardly ever listened to classical music before, but it was soothing and put him in an introspective mood. Sunk back in his soft chair, his eyes closed. Lost in the music, a number of thoughts crossed his mind, mostly having to do with himself. But the more he thought about himself, the less reality his existence seemed to have. He began to feel like some meaningless appendage sitting there. I've always been a great fan of Chunichi dragons, he thought, but what are the dragons to me anyway? Say they beat the giants, how's that going to make me a better person? How could it? So why the heck have I spent all this time getting worked up like the team was some extension of myself? Mr. Nakata said he's empty. Maybe he is, for all I know. But what does that make me? He said an accident when he was little made him that way, empty. But I never had an accident. If Mr. Nakata's empty, that makes me worse than empty. At least he has something about him. Whatever it was that made me drop everything and follow him to Shikoku. Don't ask me what that something is, though. Hoshino ordered another cup of coffee. You like your coffee, then? The gray-haired owner came over and asked. Hoshino didn't know this, of course, but the man used to be an official in the Ministry of Education. After retirement, he came back to the hometown of Takamatsu and opened up his coffee shop, where he made fine coffee and played classical music. It's great, such a nice aroma. I roast the beans myself, select each bean individually. No wonder it's so good. The music doesn't bother you. The music? Hoshino replied. No, it's great. I don't mind it at all. Not one bit. Who's playing? The Rubinstein, Heifetz, and Feuermann Trio, the $1 Million Trio. They were dubbed consummate artists. This is an old 1941 recording, but the brilliance hasn't faded. It really hasn't. Good things never grow old, do they? Some people prefer a more structured, classic, straightforward version of the Archduke Trio, like The Oistrach Trio's version. No, I think this one's nice, Hoshino said. It has a, gentle feel to it. Thank you very much, the owner said, thanking him on behalf of the $1 Million Trio, and went back behind the counter. As Hoshino enjoyed his second cup, he went back to his reflections. But I am helping Mr. Nakata out. I read things for him, and I was the one who found the stone after all. I've hardly ever noticed this before, but it feels kind of nice to be helpful to someone. I don't regret any of it. Skipping out on work, coming over to Shikoku. All those crazy things happening, one after another. I feel like I'm exactly where I belong. When I'm with Mr. Nakata, I can't be bothered with all this who I am stuff. Maybe this is going overboard, but I bet Buddha's followers and Jesus' apostles felt the same way. When I'm with the Buddha, I always feel I'm where I belong. Something like that. Forget about culture though. Truth, all that junk. That kind of inspiration's what it's all about. When I was little, Grandpa told me stories about Buddha's disciples. One of them was named Miyoga. The guy was a complete moron and couldn't memorize even the simplest sutra. The other disciples always teased him. One day, the Buddha said to him, Miyoga, you're not very bright, so you don't have to learn any sutras. Instead, I'd like you to sit at the entrance and polish everybody's shoes. Miyoga was an obedient guy, so he didn't tell his master to go screw himself. So for 10 years, 20 years, he diligently polished everybody's shoes. Then, one day, he achieved enlightenment and became one of the greatest of all the Buddha's followers. That's a story Hoshino always remembered, because he thought that had to be the crappiest kind of life, polishing shoes for decades. You gotta be different. You gotta be kidding, he thought. But when he considered it now, the story started to take on a different undertone. Life's crappy, no matter how you cut it. He just hadn't understood that when he was little. These thoughts occupied him till the music, which was helping him meditate, stopped playing. Hey, he called out to the owner. Was that music called again? I forget. Beethoven's Archduke Trio. Marchduke? Archduke. Beethoven dedicated it to the Austrian Archduke Rudolf. It's not the official name, more like the piece's nickname. Rudolf was the son of Emperor Leopold II. He was a very skilled musician who studied piano and music theory with Beethoven. Starting when he was 16, he looked up to Beethoven. Archduke Rudolf didn't make a name for himself as either a pianist or a composer, but sort of stood in the shadows, lending a helping hand to Beethoven, who didn't know much about getting ahead in the world. If it hadn't been for him, Beethoven would have had much tougher time. Those kind of people are necessary in life, huh? Absolutely. The world would be a real mess if everybody was a genius. Somebody's got to keep watch, take care of business. Exactly. A world full of geniuses would have significant problems. I really like that piece. It's beautiful. You never get tired of listening to it. I'd say it's the most refined of all Beethoven's piano trios. He wrote it when he was 40 and never wrote another. He must have decided he'd reached the pinnacle of the genre. I think I know what you mean. Reaching the pinnacle's important in everything, Hoshino said. Please come again. Yeah, I'll do that. When he got back to the room, Nakata was, as expected, out cold. He'd gone through his life this before, so this time it didn't strike him as odd. Right next to his pillow, and Hoshino put his sack of bread down beside it. He took a bath and changed into his new underwear, then balled up his old set inside a paper bag and tossed it into the trash. He crawled into his futon and was soon sound asleep. He woke up the next morning just before 9. Nakata was still asleep, his breathing quiet and regular. Hoshino went to eat breakfast alone, asking the maid not to wake up his companion. "You can just leave the futon like this," he said. "Is he all right, sleeping that long?" the maid asked. "Don't worry, he's not about to die on us. He needs to sleep to regain his strength. I know exactly what's best for him." He bought a paper at the station and sat on the bench and looked through the movie listings. The theater near the station was having a François Truffaut retrospective. Hoshino had no idea what Truffaut was, or even if it was a man or a woman, but a double feature was a good way of killing time till evening, so he decided to go. The featured films were The 400 Blows and Shoot the Pianist. There were only a handful of customers in the theater. Hoshino wasn't by any means a movie buff. Occasionally he'd go to see one, a kung fu or action film. So these early works of Truffaut were over his head in spots. The pace, as you'd expect, of older films, a bit sluggish. Still, he enjoyed the unique mood, the overall look of the films, how suggestively the characters' inner worlds were portrayed. At the very least, he wasn't bored. "I wouldn't mind seeing some more films by that guy," he told himself afterward. He exited the theater, walking to the shopping district, and went inside the same coffee shop as the night before. The owner remembered him. Hoshino sat in the same chair and ordered coffee. As before, he was the sole customer. Something with stringed instruments was playing in the stereo. Haydn's first cello concerto. Pierre Fournier's playing the solo, the owner explained as he brought over Hoshino's coffee. "It's a real natural sound," Hoshino commented. "It is, isn't it?" the owner said. "Pierre Fortier was one of my absolute favorite musicians, like an elegant vine. His playing has an aroma and substance that warms the blood and gently encourages you. I always refer to him as Maestro Fournier, out of respect. I don't know him personally, of course, but I've always felt like he's my mentor." Listening to Fournier's flowing, dignified cello, Hoshino was drawn back to his childhood. He used to go to the river every day and catch fish. Nothing to worry about back then. He reminisced. Just like each day as it came. As long as I was alive, I was something. That was just how it was. But somewhere along the line, it was changed. Living turned into nothing. Weird. People are born in order to live, right? But the longer I've lived, the more I've lost what's inside me, and ended up empty. And I bet the longer I live, the emptier, the more worthless I become. Something's wrong with this picture. Life isn't supposed to turn out like this. Isn't this possible to shift direction? To change where I'm headed? "Excuse me," Hoshino called out to the owner at the register. "Can I help you? I was wondering, if you had time, could you come over and talk with me? I'd like to know more about this Haydn guy." The owner was happy to give a mini lecture on Haydn, the man, and his music. He was basically a reserved sort of person, but when it came to classical music, he was eloquent. He explained how Haydn became a hired musician, serving different patrons over his long life. composing who knows how many compositions to order. Haydn was practical, affable, humble, and generous, he said, yet also a complex person with a silent darkness, all his own inside. Haydn was an enigmatic figure. Nobody really knows the amount of intense pathos he held inside him. And the feudal time he was born in, though, he was compelled to skillfully cloak his ego in submissiveness and display a smart, happy exterior. Otherwise, he would have been crushed. A lot of people compare him unfavorably to Bach or Mozart, both his music and the way he lived. Over his long life, he was innovative, to be sure, but never exactly on the cutting edge. But if you really pay attention and you listen, you can catch a hidden longing for the modern ego, like a far-off echo full of contradictions. It's all there in Haydn's music, silently pulsating. Listen to that chord, hear it? It's very quiet, right? But it was a persistent, inward-moving spirit that's filled with a pliant, youthful sort of curiosity, like Francois Truffaut's films. Exactly, the owner exclaimed happily, patting Hoshino's arm reflexively. You hit it right on the head. You find this same spirit animating Truffaut. A persistent, inward-moving spirit that's filled with a pliant, youthful sort of curiosity, he repeated. When the Haydn concerto was over, Hoshino asked him to play the Rubinstein Heifetz Feuermann version of the Archduke Trio again. While listening to this, he again was lost in thought. Damn it, I don't care what happens, he finally decided. I'm going to follow Mr. Nakata as long as I live. To hell with that job. Chapter 35. When the phone rings at 7 a.m., I'm still sound asleep. In my dream, I was deep inside a cave, bent over in the dark, flashlight in hand, searching for something. Out? I hear a voice, far away, at the cave's entrance, calling out my name, faintly. I yell out to reply, but whoever it is doesn't seem to hear me. The person calls out my name over and over. Reluctantly, I stand up and start heading to the entrance. A little longer, and I would have found it, I think. But inside I'm also relieved I didn't find it. That's when I wake up. I look around, collecting the scattered bits of my consciousness. I realize the phone's ringing. The phone at the library's reception desk. Bright sunlight shining in through the curtains. And Miss Saeki's no longer next to me. I'm alone in bed. I get out of bed in my t-shirt and boxers and go out to the phone. It takes me a while to get there, but the phone keeps on ringing. Hello? Were you asleep? Oshima asks. Yeah. Sorry to get you up so early on a day off, but we've got a problem. A problem? I'll tell you about it later, but you'd better not hang around there for a while. We're going to head off soon to get you things together. When I get there, just come out to the parking lot and get right to the car without saying anything, okay? Okay, I reply. I go back to my room and pack up. There's no need to rush since it only takes 5 minutes to get ready. I take down the laundry I had hanging in the bathroom, stuff my toilet kit, books, and diary in my backpack. Then get dressed and straighten up the bed. Pull the sheets tight, plump up the pillows, straighten out the covers, covering up all the traces of what went on here. I sit down in the chair and think about Miss Saeki, who'd been with me until a few hours before. I have time for a quick bowl of cornflakes, wash up the bowl and spoon and put them away, brush my teeth, wash my face, I'm checking out my face in the mirror when I hear the Miata pull in the parking lot. Even though the weather's perfect, Oshima has the tan top on. I shoulder my pack, walk over to the car, and climb into the passenger seat. As before, Oshima does a good job of tying my backpack down on top of the trunk. He's wearing a pair of Armani-type sunglasses and a striped linen shirt over a white V-neck t-shirt, white jeans, and navy blue low-cut Converse All-Stars. Casual day-off clothes. He hands me a navy blue cap with the North Face logo on it. Didn't you say you lost your hat somewhere? Use this one. It'll help hide your face a little. Thanks, I say, and tag on the cap. Oshima checks me out in the cap and nods his approval. You have sunglasses, right? I nod. Take my sky blue Revos from my pocket and put them on. Very cool, he says. Try putting the cap on backward. I do as he says, turning the cap around. Oshima nods again. Great, you look like a rap singer from the nice family. He shifts to first, slowly steps on the gas, and lets out a clutch. Where are you going? I ask. The same place as before. The mountains in Kochi. Oshima nods. Right, another long drive. He flips on the stereo. It's cheerful Mozart orchestral piece I've heard before. The Post-Thorn Serenade, maybe? Are you tired of the mountains? No, I like it there. It's quiet, and I never get a lot of reading done. Good, Oshima says. So, what was the problem you mentioned? Oshima shoots a sullen look at the rearview mirror, glances over at me, then faces forward again. First of all, the police got back in touch with me. Phoned the place last night. Sounds like they're getting serious about tracking you down. They seem pretty intense about the whole thing. But I have an alibi, don't I? Yes, you do. A solid alibi. The day the murder took place, you were in Shikoku. They don't doubt that. What they are thinking is you might have conspired with somebody else. Conspired? You might have had an accomplice. Accomplice? I shake my head. Where'd they get that idea? They're pretty tight-lipped about it. They're pushy about asking questions, but get all low-key when you try turning the tables on them. So I spent the whole night online downloading information about the cause. Did you know there's a couple of websites up already about it? They're pretty famous. The Wandering Prince who holds the key to the puzzle. I give a small shrug. The Wandering Prince? With online information, it's hard to separate fact from wishful thinking, but you could summarize it like this. The police are now after a guy in his late 60s. The night of the murder, he showed up at a police box near the Nakata shopping district and confessed to just having murdered somebody in the neighborhood. Said he stabbed him, but he spouted out all kinds of nonsense, so the young cop on the beat tagged him as crazy and sent him on his way without getting the whole story. Of course, when the murder came to light, the policeman knew he'd blown it. He hadn't taken down the old man's name or address, and if his superiors heard about it, there'd be hell to pay, so he kept quiet about it. But something happened. I have no idea what, and the whole thing came up to light. The cop was disciplined, of course. Poor guy'll probably never live it down. Oshima downshifts to pass the white Toyota Tercel, then, nimbly, slips back into the lane. The police went all out and were able to identify the old man. They don't know his background, but he appears to be mentally impaired. Not retarded, just a teeny bit off. He lives by himself, on welfare, and some support from relatives, but he's disappeared from his apartment. The police traced his movements and think he was hitchhiking, heading for Shikoku. An intercity bus driver thinks he might have ridden his bus out of Kobe. He remembered him because he had an unusual way of talking and said some weird things. Apparently, he was with some young guy in his mid-20s. The two of them got out at Tokushima station. They've located the inn where they stay, and, according to the housekeeper, they took the train to Takamatsu. The old man's movements and yours overlap exactly. Both of you left Nakata in Nakano ward and headed straight to Takamatsu. A little too much of a coincidence. So, naturally, the police are reading something into it, thinking that the two of you planned the whole thing together. The national police agencies even getting in the act, and now they're scouting the city. We might not be able to hide you at the library anymore, so I decided you'd better lie down in the mountains. A mentally impaired old man from Nakano. Ring any bells? I shake my head. None. His address isn't far from your house. A 15-minute walk, apparently. But tons of people live in Nakano. I don't even know who lives next door. There's more, Oshima says, and glances at me. He is the one who made all those mackerel and sardines rain down from the sky in the Nakata shopping district. At least, he predicted to the police that lots of fish would fall from the sky the day before it happened. That's amazing, I say. Isn't it? Oshima says. And the same day, in the evening, a huge amount of leeches rained down from on the Fujigawa rest stop on the Tomei highway, remember? Yes, I do. None of this slipped past the police, of course. They're guessing there's got to be some connection between these events and this mystery man they're after. His movements parallel everything so closely. The Mozart piece ends, and another begins. Hands on the steering wheel, Oshima shakes his head a couple of times. A really strange turn of events. It started out weird and is getting even weirder as it goes along. Impossible to predict what will happen next. One thing's for sure, though, everything seems to be converging right here. The old man's path and yours. The bound to cross. I close my eyes and listen to the roar of the engine. Maybe I should go to some other town, I tell him. Apart from everything else, I don't want to cause you or Miss Saeki any more trouble. But where would you go? I don't know, but I can figure it out if you take me to the station. It doesn't really matter. Oshima sighs. I don't think that's such a smart idea. The station has to be crawling with cops. All on the lookout for a cool, tall 15-year-old boy, lugging a backpack and a bunch of obsessions. So, why not take me to the station far away that they're not stalking out? It's all the same. In the end, they'll find you. I don't say anything. Look, they haven't issued a warrant for your arrest. You're not on the most wanted list or anything, okay? I nod. Which means you're still free. So I don't need anybody's permission to take you anywhere I want. I'm not breaking the law, I don't even know your real first name, Kafka. So don't worry about me. I'm a very cautious person. Nobody's going to nab me so easily. Oshima? I say. Yes? I didn't plan anything with anybody. If I had to kill my father, I wouldn't ask anybody to do it. I know. He stops at the red light and checks the rearview mirror. Then pops a lemon drop into his mouth and offers me one. I slip it in my mouth. What comes after that? What do you mean? Oshima asks. You said, first of all, about why I have to go hide in the hills. If there's a first reason, there's got to be a second. Oshima stares at the red light, but it doesn't change. Compared to the first, the second isn't very important. I still want to hear it. It's about Miss Saeki, he says. The light finally turns green, and the steps on the gas. You're sleeping with her, right? I don't know how to answer that. Don't worry, I'm not blaming you for anything. I just have the sense of these things, that's all. She's a wonderful person, a very attractive lady. She's special in all sorts of ways. She's a lot older than you, sure, but so what? I understand your attraction to her. You want to have sex with her, so why not? She wants to have sex with you. More power to her. It doesn't bother me. If you guys are okay with that, it's fine by me. Oshima rolls the lemon drop around his mouth. But I think it's best if you two keep your distance for a while. And I don't mean because of that bloody mess in Nakano. Why then? She's in a very delicate place right now. How so? Miss Saeki, he begins, searching for the rest. What I mean is, she's dying. I felt it for a long time. I raise my sunglasses and look at him closely. He is looking straight ahead as he drives. We've turned onto the highway to Kochi. This time, surprisingly, he keeps to the speed limit. A Toyota Supra whooshes past us. When you say she's dying, I begin. You mean she's got an incurable disease? Cancer or leukemia or something? Oshima shakes his head. That could be, but I don't know anything about her health. For all I know, she might be saddled with a disease like that. I think it's more a psychological issue. The will to live, something to do with that. You're saying she's lost the will to live? I think so. Lost the will to go on living. Do you think she's going to kill herself? No, I don't, Oshima replies. It's just that, very quietly, very steadily, she's heading toward death. Or else death is heading toward her. Like a train heading toward a station. Something like that, Oshima said, and stopped. His lips taut. But then you showed up, Kafka. Cool as a cucumber, mysterious as a real Kafka. The two of you were drawn together, and, to use the classic expression, you have a relationship. And then, for a brief moment, Oshima lifts both hands off the wheel. That's it. I slowly shake my head. I bet you're thinking I'm the train. Oshima doesn't say anything for a long time. Exactly. He finally says, That's it. Exactly. That I'm ringing you about her death. I'm not blaming you for this, mind you, he says. It's actually for the best. Why? He doesn't answer this. You're supposed to find the answer to that, his silence tells me. Or maybe he's saying, it's too obvious to even think about. I lean back in my seat, shut my eyes, and let my body go limp. Oshima, what is it? I don't know what to do anymore. I don't even know what direction I'm facing in. What's right, what's wrong, whether I should keep going ahead or turn around. I'm totally lost. Oshima keeps silent. No answer forthcoming. You've got to help me. What am I supposed to do? I ask him. You don't have to do anything, he says simply. Nothing. He nods. Which is why I'm taking you to the mountains. But what should I do once I get there? Just listen to the wind, he says. That's what I always do. I mull this over. He gently lays a hand over mine. There are a lot of things that aren't your fault, or mine either. Not the fault of prophecies, or curses, or DNA, or absurdity. Not the fault of structuralism, or the third industrial revolution. We all die and disappear, but that's because the mechanism of the world itself is built on destruction and loss. Our lives are just shadows of the guiding principle. Say the wind blows. It can be strong, violent wind or a gentle breeze. But eventually, every kind of wind dies out and disappears. Wind doesn't have form. It's just a movement of air. You should listen carefully, and then you'll understand the metaphor. I squeeze his hand back. It's soft and warm. his smooth, sexless, delicately graceful hand. "So, you think it's better for me to be away from Miss Saeki for the time being?" "I do, Kafka. It's the best thing right now. We should let her be by herself. She's bright and tough. She's managed to pull up with a terrible kind of loneliness for a long time. A lot of painful memories. She can make whatever decisions she needs to make alone. So, I'm just a kid who's getting in the way." "That's not what I mean," Oshima says softly. "That's not it at all. You did what you had to do, what made sense to you, and to her. Leave the rest up to her. This might sound cold, but there's nothing you can do for her now. You need to get into the mountains and do your own thing. For you. The time is right." "Do my own thing?" "Just keep your ears open, Kafka," Oshima replies. "Just listen. Imagine you're a clam." Chapter 36. When he got back to the inn, Hoshino found Nakata, no surprise, still fast asleep. The sack he'd put next to him with bread and orange juice wasn't touched. The old man hadn't shifted an inch, probably hadn't woken up since the whole time. Hoshino counted up the hours. Nakata had gone to sleep at 2 the previous afternoon, which meant he'd been asleep for 30 solid hours. What day is it, anyway? Hoshino wondered. He was completely losing track of time. He took his memo book out of his bag and checked. "Let's see," he told himself. "We arrived in Tokushima on Saturday, on the bus from Kobe. Then Nakata slept until Monday. On Monday, we left Tokushima for Takamatsu. Thursday was all that ruckus with a stone and thunder, and that afternoon he went to sleep. So skip ahead one night, and that would make today, Friday. It's like the old guy came to Shikoku to attend some sleep festival or something." Like the night before, Hoshino took a bath, watched TV for a while, then climbed into a futon. Nakata was still breathing peacefully, sound asleep. Whatever Hoshino thought. Just go with the flow. Let him sleep as much as he wants. No need to worry about that. And he himself fell asleep. At 10:30. At 5 next morning, the cell phone in his bag went off, jolting him awake. Nakata was still out, like a knight. Hoshino reached for the phone. "Hello?" "Mr. Hoshino," a man's voice. "Colonel Sanders?" Hoshino said, recognizing the voice. "The very one. How's it hanging, sport?" "Fine, I guess. But how'd you get this number? I didn't give it to you, and the phone's been turned off all this time, so those clowns from work couldn't bother me. So, how could you call me? You're right of freaking me out here. It's like I told you, I'm neither a god nor a Buddha. Not a human being. I'm something else again, a concept. So, making your phone ring is a cinch. Piece of cake. Whether it's turned on or not makes no jolt of difference, my friend. Don't let any little thing get to you, okay? I could have run over and been right there beside you when you woke up, but I figured that'd be a bit of a shock." "You bet it would." "Which explains the phone call. I'm a well-mannered person after all." "I appreciate it," Hoshino said. "So, anyway, what are we supposed to do with the stone?" "Nakata and I managed to flip it over so that entrance thing opened up. Lightning was flashing like crazy outside, and the stone lightened a ton." "Oh, that's right. I haven't told you about Nakata yet. He's the guy I'm traveling with." "I know all about Mr. Nakata," Colonel Sanders said. "No need to explain." "You know about him," Hoshino said. "Okay, anyhow, Nakata went into the hibernation after all that. And the stone's still here. Don't you think we should get it back to the shrine? We might be cursed for taking it without permission." "You never give up, do you? How many times did I tell you there is no curse?" Colonel Sanders said disgustedly. "Keep the stone there for the time being. You opened it up, and eventually you'll have to close it again. Then you can take it back. But that's not time for that yet. Get it? We okay here?" "Yeah, I get it," Hoshino said. "Things that are open have to be shut. Things you have, you gotta return the way they were." "All right already. Anyhow, I've decided not to think about things so much. I'll go along with whatever you want, no matter how crazy it sounds. I had a kind of revelation last night. Talking crazy things seriously is a serious waste of time. A very wise conclusion. There's that saying, pointless thinking is worse than no thinking at all. I like that. Very suggestive, don't you think? Have you heard the saying, sheepish butlers, surgical bottle battles? What on earth is that supposed to mean? It's a tongue twister. I made it up. Your point being? No point, really. I just felt like saying it. Can the stupid comments or add? I don't have much patience with inanity. You'll drive me nuts if you keep it up. Sorry, Hoshino said. But why'd you call me anyway? You must have had a reason to call so early. That's right. I completely slipped my mind. Colonel Sanders said. There's the thing. I want you to leave that inn right this minute. No time to eat breakfast. Just wake up Mr. Nakata, grab the stone, and get it out. Get a cab, but don't have the inn call one for you. Go out to the main street and flag one down. Don't give the driver this address. Do you have something written with? Yep, just a sec, Hoshino replied, grabbing a pen and his notebook from his bag. Broom and dustpan, check. Enough with the stupid jokes already, Colonel Sanders yelled into the phone. I'm serious here, not a minute to lose. Okay, go ahead. Colonel Sanders recited the address and Hoshino wrote it down, repeating it to make sure he got it right. Apartment 308, Takamatsu Park Heights, 16-15, 3-Chone. Is that it? That's fine, Colonel Sanders replied. You'll find the key under the black umbrella stand in the front door. Unlock the door and go inside. You can stay there as long as you like. There's a stock of food and things, so you won't have to go out for the time being. That's your place. It is indeed. I don't own it though. It's rented. To make yourself at home. I got the place for you too. Colonel? Yeah. You told me you're not a god, or a Buddha, or a human being, correct? Correct. So I'm assuming you're not from this world. You got it. Then, how could you rent an apartment? You're not human, so you don't have all the papers and stuff you need, right? A family register, local registration, proof of income, official stamp and seal and all that. If you don't have those, nobody's gonna rent you a place. Did you cheat or something? Like change a leaf by magic into an official stamp? Enough underhanded stuff's gone on already. I don't want to get mixed up in any more. You just don't get it, do you? Colonel Sanders said, clicking his tongue. You are one major dimwit. Is your brain made out of jello? Your spineless twit. A leaf? What do you think I am? One of those magical raccoons? I'm a concept, get it? Concept. Concepts and raccoons aren't exactly the same, now are they? What a dumb thing to say. Do you really think I went over to the real estate agents, filled out all of the forms, bargained with them to lower the rent? Ridiculous. I have a secretary take care of temporary things. My secretary gets all the necessary documents and things together. What do you expect? Ah, so you have a secretary? Damn right I do. Who do you think I am anyway? You're way out of line. I'm a busy man, so why shouldn't I have a secretary? Alright. Don't blow a gasket. I was just pulling your leg. Anyway, why do you have to leave so fast? Can't we at least have a bite before we go? I'm starved, and Mr. Nakata out like a light. I couldn't wake him up no matter how hard I try. Listen up. This is no joke. The police are scouting the town for you. First thing this morning, they're making the rounds of hotels and inns, questioning everyone. They've already got the description of both of you, so once they start nosing around, it's only a matter of time. The two of you stand out, let's face it. There is not a moment to lose. The cops? Hoshino shouted. Give me a break. We haven't done anything wrong. Sure, I ripped off a few motorcycles back in high school. Just joyriding. It wasn't like I was gonna sell them or anything. I always took them back. Never done anything illegal since. Taking that stone from the shrine is about the worst thing I've done. And you told me to. This has nothing to do with the stone, Colonel Sanders said flatly. You're a real dunce sometimes. Forget the stone. The police don't know anything about it, and wouldn't give a damn if they did. They're not going to be up at the crack of the beating down the doors over the stone. We're taking out something much more serious. What do you mean? The police are after Mr. Nakata because of it. I don't get it. He's the last person you'd ever imagine committing a crime. What kind of crime? And how could he be involved? No time to go into that now. You have to get him out of there. Everything depends on you. Are we clear here? I don't get it, Hoshino repeated, shaking his head. It just doesn't make any sense. So, they're gonna tag me as an accomplice? No, but I'm sure they will question you. Time's a-wasting. Don't bother your head over it now. Just do as I say. Listen, you gotta understand one thing about me. I hate cops. They're worse than the Yakuza, worse than SDF. They're awful. The things they do. They strut around and love nothing better than tormenting the weak. I had plenty of run-ins with cops when I was in high school, even after I started driving trucks. So the last thing I need is to get into a fight with them. There's no way you can win. Plus, you can't shake him off afterward. You know what I mean. God, how did I get mixed up in all this? You see, the phone went dead. Jeez, Hoshino said. He sighed deeply and tossed the cell phone into his bag. Then tried to wake Nakata up. Hey, Mr. Nakata. Ramps, fire, flood, earthquake, revolution. Godzilla's on the loose. Get up already. It was some time before Nakata woke up. I finished the beveling, he said. The rest I used as kindling. No, cats don't take baths. I'm the one who took the bath, obviously in his own little world. Hoshino shook the old man's shoulder, pinched his nose, tugged at his ears, and finally roused him to the land of the living. Is that you, Mr. Hoshino? He asked. Yes, it's me. Hoshino replied. Sorry to wake you up. No problem. Nakata was going to get up soon anyway. Don't worry about it. I finished with the kindling. Good, but something's come up. Something not so good. And We have to get it out of here right now. Is it about Johnny Walker? That I don't know. I've got my sources, and they told me better make ourselves scarce. The cops are after us. Is that right? That's what he said. But what happened with you and this Johnny Walker guy? Didn't Nakata already tell you? No, you didn't. I feel like I did, though. No, you never told me the most important part. Well, what happened was, Nakata killed him. You've gotta be kidding. No, I'm not. Jeez Louise, Hoshino muttered. Hoshino threw the belongings into his bag and rubbed the stone back into the cloth. It was the same weight as it had been originally. Not light, but at least he could carry it. Nakata put his things in the canvas bag. Hoshino went to the front desk and told them something had come up suddenly and they had to check out. Since he had paid in advance, it didn't take long. Nakata was still a bit unsteady on his feet and could walk. How long did I sleep? He asked. Let me see, Hoshino said, doing the math. About 40 hours, give or take. I feel like I slept well. No wonder. If you don't feel refreshed after that kind of record-breaking sleep, then sleep's kind of pointless, isn't it? Hey, you hungry? Yes, I am. Very hungry. Can you hold off for a while? First, we have to get out of here. As soon as we can. Then we'll eat. That's all right. I can wait. Hoshino helped him out onto the main street and flagged down the cab. He told the driver the address and the driver nodded and sped off. The cab left the city, the driver the address, and the driver nodded the speed off. He drove down a main thoroughfare and entered a suburb. The neighborhood was upscale and quiet, quite a contrast from the noisy area near the station where they'd been staying. The ride took about 25 minutes. They stopped in front of a typical 5-story, neat-as-a-pin apartment building, Takamatsu Park Heights. The sign said, though it was on a level expanse with no park inside, they rode the elevator up to the 3rd floor, where Hoshino found the key. Sure enough, under the umbrella stand. The apartment was a standard 2-bedroom place, with a dinette kitchen, a living room, and a bathroom. The place was brand new. By the looks of it, the furniture barely used. The living room contained a widescreen TV, a small stereo, a sofa, and a love seat. And each bedroom had a bed already made up. The kitchen had the usual utensils, the shelves stocked with a passable set of plates, cups, and bowls. There were smart-looking framed prints on the walls, and the whole place looked like some model apartment a developer might come up with to show new clients. Not bad at all, Hoshino remarked. Not much character, but at least it's clean. It is very pretty, Nakata added. The large off-white fridge was packed with food. Muttering to himself, Nakata checked out everything. Finally, taking out some eggs, a green pepper, and butter, he rinsed off the pepper, sliced it into thin strips, and salted it. Next, he broke the eggs into the bowl and whipped them up with chopsticks. He pulled out a frying pan and proceeded to make 2 green pepper omelets with a practiced touch. He topped it off with toast and took the whole meal over to the dining table, along with a hot tea. You're quite the cook, Hoshino said. I'm impressed. I've always lived alone, so I'm used to it. I live alone too, but don't ask me to cook anything, 'cause I stink at it. Nakata has a lot of free time and nothing else to do. The two of them ate their toast and omelets. They were still hungry, so Nakata went back to the kitchen and sautéed some bacon and spinach, which they had with 2 more slices of toast each. Starting to feel human again, they sank back onto the sofa and had a second cup of tea. "So," Hoshino said, "you killed somebody, huh?" "Yes, I did," Nakata answered and gave a detailed account of how he stabbed Johnny Walker to death. "Man alive," Hoshino said when he'd finished. "What a freaky story. The police would never believe that, no matter how honest you are about it. I mean, I believe you, but if you told me that a week ago, I would have spent you packing." "I don't understand it myself." At any rate, somebody's been murdered, and murder's not something you just shrug off. The police aren't fooling around with this one. Not if they trailed you out of Shikoku. Nakata's sorry you had to get involved. "Aren't you gonna give yourself up?" "No, I am not," Nakata said with uncharacteristic firmness. "I already tried to, but right now I don't feel like doing that. There are some other things Nakata has to do. Otherwise, it's pointless for me to have come all this way." "You have to close the entrance again." "That's right. Things that are open have to be shut. Then it will be normal again. But there are some things Nakata has to take care of first. Colonel Sanders, the guy who told me you were the stoners," Hoshino said, "is helping us lie low. But why is he doing this? Is there some connection between him and Johnny Walker?" The more Hoshino tried to unravel it, though, the more confused he got. Better not to try to make sense, he decided, of what basically doesn't make any. Pointless thinking is worse than thinking at all, he concluded out loud, his arms crossed. "Mr. Hoshino," Nakata said. "What's up?" "I smell the sea." Hoshino went to the window, opened it, went out on the narrow veranda, and breathed in deeply. The sea smells that he could detect. Off in the distance, wide summer clouds floated above the pine forest. "I don't smell anything," he said. Nakata came over beside him and started sniffing, his nose twitching like a squirrel. "I can. The sea's right over there." He pointed to the forest. "You have quite a nose there," Hoshino said. "I have a touch of a sinus problem myself, so I'm always a bit stuffed up." "Mr. Hoshino, why don't we walk together over the ocean?" Hoshino thought about it. How could a little walk on the beach hurt anything? "Okay, let's go. Nakata has to take a dump first, if that's all right." "Take your time. We're in no rush." While Nakata was in the toilet, Hoshino walked around the apartment, checking it out. Like the colonel said, there were pretty much everything they needed. Shaving cream in the bathroom, a couple of new toothbrushes, Q-tips, band-aids, nail clippers, all the basics, even an iron and ironing board. Very considerate of him, Hoshino thought, though I imagine his secretary did all the work. They haven't forgotten a thing. He opened the closet and found fresh underwear and clothes. No aloha shirts, unfortunately. Just some ordinary striped shirts and polo shirts, brand new Tommy Hilfigers. And there I was, thinking Colonel Sanders was pretty quick on the uptake. Hoshino complained to no one in particular. He should have figured out I only wear aloha shirts. If he went to all this trouble, he at least could have bought me one. He noticed the shirt he had on was getting a bit rank, so took it off and pulled on a polo shirt. It was a perfect fit. They walked through the pines, up over a breakwater, and down to the beach. The inland sea was calm. They sat down side by side on the sand, not speaking for a long time, watching the waves rise up, later like sheets being fluffed into the air, and then, with a faint sound, break apart. Several small islands were visible offshore. Neither of them had been to the sea very often in their lives, and they feasted on their eyes on the scene. Mr. Hoshino, Nakata said, breaking the silence. What is it? The sea is really nice, isn't it? Yes, it is. Makes you feel calm. Why is that? Probably because it's so big. With nothing on it, Hoshino said, pointing. You shouldn't feel so calm if there was a 7-Eleven over there, or a Seiyu department store, would you? Or a pachinko place over there, or a Yoshikawa pawn shop. But as far as the eye can see, there is nothing, which is pretty darn nice. I suppose you are right, Nakata said, giving it some thought. Mr. Hoshino. What's up? I have a question about something else. Shoot. What's the bottom of the sea? There's like another world down there. All kinds of fish, shellfish, seaweed, and stuff. You've never been to an aquarium? No, I've never been. The place where Nakata lived for a long time, Matsumoto, didn't have one of those. No, I don't imagine it would, Hoshino said. A town like that, off in the hills, I guess a mushroom museum or something would be all about. You would expect. Anyhow, there's all kinds of stuff at the bottom of the sea. The animals are different than us. They take oxygens from the water and don't need air to breathe. There's some beautiful things down there, some delicious things, plus some dangerous things, and things that'd totally creep you out if you've never seen it. It's hard to explain, but it's completely different than what we've used to. Way down at the bottom of it, it's totally dark, and there are some of the grossest creatures I've ever seen. What do you say when all this blows over the crack out an aquarium? They're kind of fun, and I haven't been to one in a long time. I'm sure there's one around here. Yes, I'd love to go to the place like that. There's something I wanted you to know. Yes. The other day, we lifted up the stone and opened the entrance, right? Yes. You and I opened up the entrance. After that, Nakata fell sound asleep. What I want you to know is... Did something take place before the entrance opened up? Nakata gave a nod. Yes, it did. But you still don't know what it was. Nakata gave a decisive shake of his head. No, Nakata doesn't know yet. So maybe it's happening someplace else, right this minute. Yes, I think that is true. As you said, it's happening, and I'm waiting for it to finish happening. And once whatever it is finishes taking place, everything will work itself out. Another definitive shake of the head. That Nakata doesn't know. I'm going to what I'm doing because I must, but I have no idea what will happen because of what I do. I'm not so bright, so it's too hard for me to figure out. I don't know what's going to happen. At any rate, it's gonna take some time, right? For whatever it is to finish up, and some conclusion or something to happen. That is correct. And while we're waiting, we have to make sure the cops don't grab us, because there's still stuff that needs doing. Correct. I don't mind visiting the police. I'm ready to do whatever the governor tells me to do. But now, I just... not good time for that. You know what? If the cops heard your crazy story, they just blow it off and make it up a convenient concession. Something anyone could believe. Like you were robbing the house and you hurt somebody, so you grabbed the knife from the kitchen and stabbed him. They don't give a damn about the real facts are. Or what's right, framing somebody just to jack up their arrest rate. They wouldn't bat an eye. Next thing you know, they're thrown in the jail, or some maximum security psycho ward. They'd lock you up and throw away the key. You don't have enough money to hire some fancy lawyer, so they'd stick out with you some court-appointed bozo who couldn't care less. So it's obvious how it'd end up. I'm afraid I don't understand all. I'm just telling you what cops are like. Believe me, I know, Hoshino said. So I really don't want to take on, okay? Cops and me just don't hit it off. I'm sorry to cause so many problems for you. Hoshino sighed deeply. As they say so, take the poison, take the plate. What does that mean? If you're gonna take poison, you might as well eat the plate it came on. But if you eat the plate, you'll die. It's not good for your teeth either, and it'll hurt your throat. I'd have to agree, Hoshino said, puzzling over it. Yeah. Why do you have to eat the plate? I am not so bright, so I really can't tell you. But aside from the poison, the plate is way too hard. You got that right. I'm starting to get confused myself. I never was one for using my head either. What I'm trying to say is, I've come this far, so I'll stick with you and make sure you escape. I can't believe you did something bad, and I'm not going to just abandon you there. I've got my honor to consider. Much obliged. Nakata can't thank you enough. I'll presume on you again, though. And ask one more favor. Go for it. We'll need a car. Would a rental be okay? Nakata doesn't really know what that is, but any kind is fine. Big or small is alright, as long as it's a car. No problem. Now, we're talking my specialty. I'll go pick one up in a while. So you're gonna be heading out somewhere? I think so. We probably will be headed out somewhere. You know something, Mr. Nakata? Yes. I never get bored when I'm with you. All kinds of off-the-wall things happen. But that much I can say for sure. Being with you is never boring. Thank you for saying that. I feel relieved to hear it. But, Mr. Hoshino, what's up? I'm not really sure I understand what being bored means. You've never been bored before? No, not even once. You know, I kind of had the feeling you might be the case. Chapter 37. We stopped at a town to have a bite to eat and stock up on food and mineral water at a supermarket, then drive up the unpaved road, through the hills, and arrive at the cabin. Inside it exactly as I left it a week ago. I opened the window to air out the place, then stow away the food. I'm going to take a nap before I head back, Oshima says, nearly covering his face with his hands as he lets out a huge yawn. I didn't sleep well last night. He must really be exhausted, because as soon as he gets under the covers and turns toward the wall, he's out. I make some coffee and pour it into the thermos for a ride back, then head down to the brook with the aluminium pail to fill up on water. The forest hasn't changed a bit. The same smell of grasses, bird calls, babbling, water and the brook. The rush of wind through the trees, the same shadows of rustling leaves. The clouds above me look really close. I feel nostalgic to see them again, for they have become a part of me. While Oshima sleeps, I sit on the porch, sip tea, and read a book about Napoleon's 1812 invasion of Russia. Some 400,000 French soldiers lost their lives in that huge country in this massive, pointless campaign. The battles themselves were awful, of course, but there weren't enough doctors or medical supplies, so most of the severely wounded soldiers were left to die in agony. More froze to death or died of starvation, equally terrible ways to die. Seated there, on the porch, sipping hot herb tea, birds whistling all around me, I tried to picture the battlefield in Russia, and these men, trudging through blizzards. I get about a third of the way through the book and go check to see if Oshima's okay. I know he's exhausted, but he's so quiet it's like he's not even there. And I'm a little worried. But he's alright, wrapped in the covers, breathing quietly. I walk over next to him and notice his shoulders rising and falling slightly. Standing there, I suddenly remember that he's a woman. Most of the time I forget that. And think of him as a man. Which is exactly what he wants, of course. But when he's sleeping, he looks like he's gone back to being a woman. I go out on the porch again and pick up where I left off in the book. Back to the road outside Smolensk, lined with frozen corpses. Oshima sleeps for a couple of hours. After he wakes up, he walks out on the porch and looks at his car. The dusty, unpaved road has turned the green Miata almost white. He gives a big stretch and sits down next to me. It's a rainy season, he says, rubbing his eyes. But there's not much rain this year. If you don't get some soon, Takamatsu's going to run out of water. I venture a question. Did Miss Saeki know where I am? He shakes his head. No, I didn't tell her anything. She doesn't even know I have a cabin up here. It's better to keep her in the dark, so she don't get mixed up in all this. The less she knows, the less she needs to hide. I nod. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. She's gotten mixed up in enough before, Oshima says. She doesn't need this now. I told her about my father dying recently. I tell him how somebody murdered him. I left out the part about the police looking for me. She's pretty smart. Even if neither of us mentioned it, I get the feeling she's figured out most of what's going on. So if I tell her tomorrow that you had something you had to do and will be gone for a while, and tell her hi from you, I doubt she'll quiz me about the details. Even if that's all I tell her, I know she'll just let it pass. I nod. But you want to see her, don't you? I don't reply. I'm not sure how to express it, but the answer isn't hard to guess. I feel kind of sorry for you, Oshima says. But like I said, I think you shouldn't see each other for a while. But I might never see her again. Perhaps, Oshima says, after giving it some thought. This is pretty obvious, but until things happen, they haven't happened, and often things aren't what they seem. But how does Miss Saeki feel? Oshima narrows his eyes and looks at me. About what? I mean, if she knows she'll never see me again, does she feel the same about me as I feel about her? Oshima grins. Why are you asking me this? I have no idea, which is probably why I'm asking you. Loving somebody, wanting them more than anything, it's all a new experience. The same with having somebody want me. I imagine you're confused and don't know what to do. I nod. Exactly. You don't know if she shares the same strong, pure feelings you have for her, Oshima says. I shake my head. It hurts to think about it. Oshima's silent for a time as he gazes out at the forest, eyes narrowed. Birds are flitting from the branch to the next. His hands are clasped behind his head. I know you feel, he finally says, but this is something you have to figure out on your own. Nobody can help you. That's what love's all about, Kafka. You're the one having those wonderful feelings, but you have to go it alone as you wander through the dark. Your mind and body have to bear it all by yourself. It's after 2 when he gets ready to leave. If you divide up the food, he tells me, it should last you a week. I'll be back by then. If something comes up I can't make it, I'll send my brother here with supplies. He only lives about an hour away. I've told him about you being here, so no worries, okay? Okay. And, like I told you before, be extra cautious if you go into the woods. If you get lost, you'll never find your way out. I'll be careful. Just before World War II started, a large unit of Imperial troops carried out some training exercises here, staging mock battles with the Soviet army in the Siberian forests. Did I tell you this already? No. Seems like I forgot the most important thing, Oshima says, sleepishly, tapping his temple. But this doesn't look like Siberian forests, I say. You're right. The trees here are all broadleaf types. The ones in those forests would have to be evergreens. But I guess the military didn't worry about the details. The point was to march into the forest in full battle gear and conduct their war games. He pours out a cup of coffee I made from the thermos, spoons in a dollop of sugar, and seems pleased with the results. The military asked my great-grandfather to let me use the mountain for their training. And he said sure, be my guest. Nobody else was using it after all. The unit marched up the road we drove here on, then went into the forest. But when the exercises were finished and they took roll call, they discovered 2 soldiers were missing. They just disappeared. Full battle gear and all, during the training, both brand new draftees. The army conducted a huge search, but the 2 soldiers never turned up. Hoshima takes another sip of coffee. To this day, nobody knows if they simply got lost or ran away. The forest around here is incredibly deep, and there is hardly anything you could forage for food. I nod. There's another world that parallels our own, and to a certain degree you're able to step into that world and come back safely, as long as you're careful. But go past a certain turn point, and you'll lose the path out. It's a labyrinth. Do you know where the idea of labyrinths first came up? I shake my head. It was the ancient Mesopotamians. They pulled out animal intestines, sometimes human intestines, I expect, and used the shape to predict the future. They admired the complex shape of intestines. So the prototype of labyrinth is, in a word, guts, which means that the principle for the labyrinth is inside you, and that correlates to the labyrinth outside. Another metaphor, I comment. That is right. A reciprocal metaphor. Things outside you are projections of what's inside you, and what's inside you is a projection of what's outside. So when you step into the labyrinth outside you, at the same time you're stepping into the labyrinth inside. Most definitely a risky business. Sort of like Hansel and Gretel. Right, just like them. The forest has a trap, and no matter what you do, no matter how careful you are, some sharp-eyed birds are going to eat up all your breadcrumbs. I promise I'll be careful, I tell him. Oshima lowers the top of the Miata and climbs in. He puts on his sunglasses and rests his hand on the gear shift. The forest echoes with the sound of that familiar roads. He brushes back his hair, gives an abbreviated wave, and is gone. Dust swirls around where he was, but the wind soon carries it away. I go back inside the cabin. I lay down on the bed he'd been using and shut my eyes. Come to think of it, I didn't get much sleep last night neither. The pillow and covers still show signs of Oshima having slept there. Not him, really, more like his sleep. I sink down in no signs. I've slept for half an hour when there's a loud thump outside the cabin, like a tree branch snapped and tumbled to the ground. The sound jolts me awake. I get up and walk out to the porch to have a look, but everything looks the same. Maybe this is some mysterious sound the forest makes from time to time, or maybe it was part of a dream. I can't tell one from another. Until the sun sinks down in the west, I sit out on the porch, reading my book. I make a simple meal and eat it in silence. After clearing away the dishes, I sink back in an old sofa and think about Miss Saeki. Like Oshima said, Miss Saeki is a smart person, plus she has her own way of doing things. The boy named Kraus says, "He's sitting next to me on the sofa, just like when we were in my father's den." "She's very different from you," he tells me. "She's very different from you. She's overcome all kinds of obstacles, and not what you'd call normal obstacles either. She knows all kinds of things you're clueless about. She's experienced a range of emotions you never felt. The longer people live, the more they learn to distinguish what's important from what's not. She's had to make a lot of critical decisions, and has seen the results. Again, very different from you. You're only a child who's lived in a narrow world and experienced very little. You worked hard to become stronger, and in some areas you actually have. That's a fact. But now you find yourself in a new world, in a situation you've never been in before. It's all new to you, so no wonder you feel confused. No wonder you feel confused. One thing you don't understand very well is whether women have sexual desire. Theoretically, of course, they do. That much even you know. But when it comes to how this desire comes out, what it's like, you're lost. Your own sexual desire is a simple matter, but women's desire, especially Miss Saeki's, is a total mystery. When she held you, does she feel the same physical ecstasy, or is it something altogether different? The more you think about it, the more you hate being 15. You feel hopeless. If only you were 20, no, even 18, would be good. Anything but 15. You could understand better what her words and actions mean. Then you could respond the right way. You're in the middle of something wonderful, something so tremendous you may never experience it again, but you can't really understand how wonderful it is. That makes you impatient. And that, in turn, leads to despair. You try to picture what she's doing right now. It's Monday and the library is closed. What does she do on her days off? You imagine her alone in her apartment. She does the laundry, cooks, cleans, goes out shopping. Each scene flashes in your imagination. The more you imagine, the harder it gets to sit still, here. You want to turn into a dauntless crow and fly out of the cabin, zoom out over there, over the mountains, come to the rest outside her apartment and gaze at her forever. Perhaps the stops by the library and goes into your room. She knocks, but there's no answer. The door's unlocked. She discovers you are no longer there. The bed is made, and all your things are gone. She wonders where you disappeared to. Perhaps she waits a while for you to come back, sitting at the desk, head in hands, gazing at Kafka on the shore, thinking of the past that's enveloped in that painting. But no matter how long she waits, you don't return. She finally gives up and leaves. She walks over to her Golf in the parking lot and starts the engine. The last thing you want is to let her leave like this. You want to hold her and know what each and every moment of her body means. But you're not there. You're all alone in a place cut off from everywhere. You climb into a bed and turn off the light, hoping that she'll show up in this room. It doesn't have to be the real Miss Saeki. That 15-year-old girl would be fine. It doesn't matter what form it takes. A living spirit, an illusion. But you have to see her. Have to have her beside you. Your brain is so full of her it's ready to burst. Your body about to explode into pieces. Still, no matter how much you want her to be there, no matter how long you wait, she never appears. All you hear is the faint rustle of wind outside, birds softly cooing in the night. You hold your breath, staring off into the gloom. You listen to the wind, trying to read something into it, straining to catch a hint of what it might mean. But all that surrounds you are different shades of darkness. Finally, you give up, close your eyes, and fall asleep. Chapter 38. Hoshino looked up rental car agencies in the yellow pages, picked one at random and phoned them. "I just need a car for a couple of days," he explained. "So an ordinary sedan is fine. Nothing too big, nothing that stands out." "Maybe I shouldn't say it," the rental clerk said. "But since we only rep Mazdas, we don't have a single car that stands out, so rest assured." "Great. How about a Familia? A very reliable car, and I swear nobody will notice it at all." "Sounds good. The Familia it is." The rental agency was near the station, and Hoshino told them he'd be over in an hour to pick up the car. He took a taxi over, showed them his credit card and license, then rented the car for 2 days. The white Familia parked in the lot was, as advertised, totally unobtrusible. Turn away from it for a moment and every memory of what it looked like vanished. A notable achievement in the field of anonymity. Driving back to the apartment, Hoshino stopped at the bookstore and picked up maps of Takamatsu City and the Shikoku Highway system. He popped into the CD shop nearby to see if they had a copy of Beethoven's Archduke Trio, but the little shop had only a small classical selection and one cheap discount bin version of the piece. Not the $1 million trio, unfortunately. But Hoshino went ahead and paid his $8. Back in the apartment, a soothing fragrance filled the place. Nakata was bustling around the kitchen, preparing some steamed daikon and deep-fried flat tofu. "I had nothing to do, so I made a few dishes," he explained. "That's great," Hoshino said. "I've been eating too much these days, and it'll be nice to have some home-cooked meal for a change. Oh, hey, I got the car. It is parked outside. Do you need it right now?" "No, tomorrow would be fine. Nakata has to talk some more with the stone today." "Good idea. Taking things over is important, whether you're talking with people or things, or whatever. It's always better to discuss things. You know, when I'm driving trucks, I often talk to the engine. You can hear all kinds of things if you listen closely." Nakata can't talk with engines, but it is important to discuss things. "So, how's it going with the stone? You able to communicate?" "We are starting to." "That's good. I was wondering, is the stone upset we brought it here?" "No, not at all. But as far as I can make out, the stone doesn't much care where it is." "Phew, that's a relief," Hoshino sighed. "After all we've been through, if the stone turns out on us, we're up a creek." Hoshino spent the afternoon listening to his new CD. The performance wasn't as spontaneous and memorable as the one he'd heard in the coffee shop. It was more restrained and steady, but overall not so bad. As he lay back on the couch and listened, the lovely melody got to him, the subtle convolutures of a fugue stirring up something deep inside. "If I'd listened to this music a week ago," he told himself, "I wouldn't have understood the first thing about it, or even wanted to. But chance brought him to that little coffee shop, where he sank back in the comfortable chair, enjoyed the coffee, and listened to the music. And now, look at me," he thought. "I'm into Beethoven. Can you believe it? A pretty amazing development." He played the piece over and over, testing out his newfound appreciation for music. The CD contained a second Beethoven trio, The Ghost. Not such a bad piece, he thought, though the Archduke is definitely his favorite. More depth, he concluded. All the while, Nakata was off in the corner, facing the white stone and muttering. Occasionally, he'd nod or scratch his head. Two men off in their own little words. "Does the music bother you?" Hoshino asked him. "No, it's fine. Music doesn't bother me. To me, it's like the wind. The wind, huh? At 6, Nakata made dinner, grilled salmon and salad, plus a number of little side dishes he'd concocted. Hoshino switched on the TV and watched the news to see if there were any developments in the murder case. But there wasn't a word about it. Just other news. A kidnapping of an infant girl, the usual Israeli and Palestinian reprisals. A massive traffic accident on a highway in western Japan. A carjacking ring headed by foreigners. Some cabinet minister's stupid, discriminatory remark. Layoffs at companies in the communication industry. Not a single upbeat story. The two of them sat on the table and ate their dinner. "This is really good," Hoshino said. "You're quite a cook." "Much obliged. But you're the first person I've ever cooked for." "You're telling me you never eat with friends or relatives or anybody?" Nakata knew many cats, but what we eat is very different. "Well, yeah," Hoshino said. "But anyway, this is delicious, especially the vegetables." "I'm happy you like it. Nakata can't read, so sometimes I make some terrible mistakes in the kitchen. So I always use the same ingredients and cook things in the same way. If I could read, I could make all kinds of different dishes." "They are just fine." "Mr. Hoshino," Nakata said in a serious tone, sitting up straight. "Yeah? Not being able to read makes love tough." "I imagine so," Hoshino said. "The commentary with the CD says Beethoven was deaf. He was a famous composer, the top pianist in Europe, when he was young. But then one day, because of his illness, he started to go deaf. In the end, he couldn't hear a thing. Pretty rough to be a composer who can't hear. You know what I mean?" "I think so. A deaf composer is like a cook who's lost his sense of taste. A frog that's lost its webbed feet. A truck driver with his license revoked. That would throw anybody in a loop, don't you think? But Beethoven didn't let it get to him. Sure, he must have been a little depressed at first, but he didn't let misfortune get him down. It was like, problem? What problem? He composed more than ever and came up with better music than anything he'd ever written. I really admired the guy. Like this Archduke trio. He was nearly deaf when he wrote it. Can you believe it? What I'm trying to say is, it must be tough on you not being able to read, but it's not the end of the world. You might not be able to read, but there are things you can do. That's what you gotta focus on, your strength. Like being able to talk with me, with a stone." "Yeah, I am able to talk with a little now." Nakata used to be able to talk with cats. No one else can do that, right? Other people can read all the books they want, and they will not gonna be able to speak with stones or cats. These days, though, Nakata is having a lot of dreams. In my dreams, for some reason, I am able to read. I am not as dumb as I am now. I am so happy and I go to the library and read lots of books. And I am thinking how wonderful it is to be able to read. I'm reading one book after another, but then the light in the library goes out and it's dark. Somebody turned off the light. I can't see a thing. I can't read any more books. And then I wake up. Even if it is only a dream, it is wonderful to be able to read." "Interesting," Hoshino said. "And here I am able to read and hardly ever pick up a book. The world's a mixed up place, that's for sure." "Mr. Hoshino," Nakata asked, "what's up?" "What day of the week is it today?" "It's Saturday. So tomorrow will be Sunday." "Normally, yeah." "Would you drive me tomorrow morning?" "Sure, but where do you want to go?" Nakata doesn't know. I'll think about it after I get in the car. Believe it or not, Hoshino said, I had a feeling that's where you're going to say. Hoshino woke up the next morning after 7. Nakata was already up cooking breakfast. Hoshino went to the bathroom, scrubbed his face with cold water, and shaved with an electric razor. They breakfasted on rice, miso soup and eggplant, dried mackerel and pickles. Hoshino had a second helping of rice. While Nakata washed the dishes, Hoshino watched the news on TV. This time there was a short piece on the murder in Nakano. 10 days have passed since the incident, but the police still have no leads. The NHK announcer droned. An impressive front gate of the house flashed on the screen, cordoned off, with a patrolman stationed outside. The search continues for the missing 15-year-old son of the deceased, though his whereabouts remain unknown. The search continues as well for a man in his 60s who lives in the neighborhood and stopped by a police station right after the incident to provide information regarding the murder. It remains unclear whether or not there is a connection between these two people. Because the inside of the house is undisturbed, the police believed that the crime was an act of personal revenge rather than a robbery gone bad, and are investigating Mr. Tamura's friends and acquaintances. At the Tokyo National Modern Art Museum, where Mr. Tamura's artistic achievements were being honored. "Hey, Gramps," Hoshino called out to Nakata in the kitchen. "Yes, what is it?" "Do you know the son of this guy that was murdered in Nakano? This 15-year-old... "No, I don't. As I told you, all Nakata knows about Johnny Walker and his dog." "Yeah," Hoshino replied. "The police are looking for the boy, too. And only child, it sounds like. And there's no mention of his mom. I guess he ran away from home just before the murder, and he's still missing." "Is that so?" "A hard nut to crack, this murder," Hoshino said. "But the police are pretty tight-lipped bunch. They always know more than they let on. According to Colonel Sanders, they're on it to you, and know you're in Takamatsu. Plus, they know some handsome guy like me's with you. But they haven't leaked that to the media yet. They're afraid if they let on we're here, we'll hightail it somewhere else. That's why they're insisting they don't know where we are, publicly. A delightful bunch, cops." At 8:30, they went out to the rental car and climbed in. As he settled down into the passenger seat, Nakata had the usual thermos and hot tea with him, as well as his faithful, shapeless hat, umbrella, a canvas bag. As they were leaving the apartment, Hoshino was about to put on his Chunichi Dragon's cap when he glanced in the mirror and brought up short. The police must know the young guy they were looking for would be decked up in the Dragon Ball cap. Green Ray-Bans and an aloha shirt. There shouldn't be many people with dragon caps on here in Takamatsu, and add on Ray-Bans and a shirt, and he'd stick out like a sore thumb. So that's why Colonel Sanders stocked the place with inconspicuous navy blue polo t-shirts. He must have anticipated this. Nothing gets by him, Hoshino thought, and tossed the sunglasses and the cap aside. "So, where to?" he asked. "Anywhere is fine," Nakata replied. "Just circle around the city." "You sure?" "You can go wherever you like. I'll just enjoy the scenery." "This is a first," Hoshino said. "I've done my fair share of driving, both in a self-defense force and with a truck company, and I'm a decent driver, if I say so myself. But every time I get behind the wheel, I know where I'm going, and I beeline it right there. That's just the way I am, I guess. Nobody's ever told me You can go wherever you like. Anywhere is fine. You're kind of baffling me here. Nakata is very sorry. It's okay. No need to apologize. I'll do my best, Hoshino said. He slipped the CD of an Archduke trio into the player. I'll just drive all over the city while you enjoy the view. Is that okay? Yes, that would be fine. I'll stop the car when you find what we're looking for, and then the story will develop in a new direction. Do I have that right? Yes, that's what might happen, Nakata said. Let's hope so, Hoshino said, and unfolded a city map in his lap. The two of them drove through the city, Hoshino making each street on a block, to make sure they'd covered every one, then heading over the next. They took an occasional break so Nakata could enjoy a cup of tea, and Hoshino a Marlboro. The Archduke trio played over and over. At noon, they stopped by a diner and had curry. But what the heck are you looking for? Hoshino asked after they'd eaten. I don't know, but I think that you'll know when you see it. And until you see it, you won't know what it is. Yes, that's correct. Hoshino shook his head listlessly. I knew what you were gonna say, but I just had to be sure. Mr. Hoshino. Yeah? It might take some time before I find it. That's okay. We'll do our best. The boat's left the dock, and we're stuck on it. Are we going to take the boat? Nakata asked. No boats, for the time being. At 3, they went into a coffee shop, where Hoshino had a cup of coffee. Nakata puzzled over his order, finally going with the iced milk. By this time, Hoshino was exhausted from all the driving and didn't feel like talking. He'd had his fill of Beethoven, driving around in a circle, getting nowhere. Didn't suit him. He had to keep his speed down and pay careful attention to what was going on. And he was getting bored. An occasional patrol car would pass by, and Hoshino did his best to avoid eye contact. He also tried to avoid passing in front of any police boxes. The Mazda Familia might be just about the most inconspicuous car on the road, but if the police spotted the same car passing by a few times, they might very well pull him over. He drove cautiously, making absolutely sure he didn't rear-end anybody. An accident would put everything in jeopardy. As Hoshino drove around the city, checking the map as he went, Nakata sat motionless, hands on the window, scanning the passing scenery, intently searching for something. For all the world like a child or a well-behaved dog, they each concentrated on their task until evening, and hardly a word passed between them. What are you searching for? Out of desperation, Hoshino started singing an Inoue Yosui tune. He couldn't recall the rest of the lyrics, so he made them up as he went along. Haven't you found it yet? The sun is soon setting, and Hoshino's stomach is growling. Driving round and round sets my head spinning. They went back to the apartment at 6. Let's continue tomorrow, Nakata said. We covered a lot of territory today. We can probably finish up the whole city tomorrow, Hoshino said. Hey, I got a question for you. And what might that be? If you don't find what we're looking for in Takamatsu, then what? Nakata gave his head a good rub. If we can't find it in Takamatsu, then we'll have to look further out. And if you still can't find it, then what we're supposed to do. If that happens, then we have to search even more. We'll just make bigger and bigger circles and eventually we'll find it. Like the saying goes, if a dog walks on, it's bound to bump into a stick. Yes, I think that will happen, Nakata said. But Nakata doesn't understand. Why does a dog have to hit a stick if it walks? If there is a stick in front of it, the dog can go around it. Hoshino puzzled this over. Yeah, I guess that's right. I never thought about it before. It's very strange. Let's put the dog and the stick aside for a minute, okay? Hoshino said. That only complicates things. What I want to know is, how far are we going to search? If we don't watch out before we know, it will wind up in another prefecture, Ehime or Kochi or someplace. Summer will be over and it will fall by then. That may well be, but I have to find it. Even if it's fall or winter, I know I can't ask you to help me forever. Nakata will just walk alone and keep on searching. Let's not worry about that for now, Hoshino stammered. But can't the stone be a pawl and give us a hint or something? Even an approximate location would help. Nakata is very sorry, but the stone doesn't say much. Yeah, it doesn't strike me as a talkative type, Hoshino said. I don't imagine it's much good at swimming either. Whatever. We don't need to think about it now. Let's get a good night's sleep and see what tomorrow brings. The next day it was the same routine, with Hoshino this time circling the western half of the city. By now, the city map was full of yellow lines. Only the increased number of yawns coming from the driver set this day apart from the previous one. Nakata kept his face plastered against the window, intently studying the passing scenery, and they hardly spoke. Whatever Nakata was looking for, he didn't find it. Would today be Monday? Nakata asked. Yep, yesterday was Sunday, so today is Monday, Hoshino said. Then, almost in desperation, he made up a melody to some words that popped into his head. If this is Monday, tomorrow must be Tuesday. Ants are hard workers, swallows like the dress up. The chimney is tall, the setting sun red. Mr. Hoshino, Nakata said after a while. Yeah? You can look at ants working for a long time and never tire of it. I suppose you're right, Hoshino replied. At noon they stopped by a restaurant specializing in eel and ordered the lunch special, a bowl of rice topped with eel. At 3 they went to a coffee shop, where Hoshino had coffee. Nakata kept tea. By 6 p.m. the map was a mass of yellow marks, the anonymous sires of the Familia having traversed every square inch of road in the city. But still no luck. What are you searching for? Hoshino sang again, in a listless voice. Haven't you found it yet? We are gone everywhere in town. My butt's aching, so can't we go home? After he finished, he said, We keep this up much longer, I'll turn into a regular singer-songwriter, Hoshino replied. What would that be? Nakata asked. Never mind, just a harmless joke. Calling it a day, they left the city, got on the highway, and headed back to the apartment. Lost in thought, Hoshino failed to turn left when he should. He tried to get back to the highway, but the road curved off at a strange angle into the maze of one-way streets, and he was soon totally lost. Before he realized it, they were in a residential area they'd never seen before, an old-looking, elegant neighborhood with a high wall surrounding the homes. The road was strangely quiet, with not a soul in sight. I don't think we're too far from our apartment, but I have no idea where we are, Hoshino admitted. He parked the car in an empty lot, caught the engine, set the parking brake, and spread out his map. He checked the name of the neighborhood and street number on the nearby light pole, and looked for it on the map. Maybe his eyes were too tired, but he couldn't find it. Mr. Hoshino, Nakata said. Yeah? I'm sorry to bother you, but what does it say on the sign over there on that gate? Hoshino looked up from his map and glanced at Nakata was pointing. Down a high wall with an old-fashioned gate, and next to it a large wooden sign. The black gate was shut tight. Komura Memorial Library, Hoshino read. Huh, a library in this deserted part of town. Doesn't even look like a library, more like an old mansion. Komura Memorial Library. You got it. Must be made to commemorate somebody named Komura. Who this Komura guy is, though, I have no idea. Mr. Hoshino. Yup, that's it. What do you mean, that? The place Nakata's been searching for. Hoshino looked up from the map again and gazed into Nakata's eyes. He frowned, looked at the sign and slowly read it again. He patted a Marlboro out of the box, put it between his lips, and lit it with a plastic lightener. He slowly inhaled, then blew smoke out the open window. Are you sure? Yes, this is it. Chance is a scary thing, isn't it? Hoshino said. It certainly is, Nakata agreed. Chapter 39. My second day on the mountain passes by leisurely, seamlessly. The only thing that distinguishes one day from the next is the weather. If the weather was the same, I couldn't tell one day from another. Yesterday, today, tomorrow, they'd all blur into one. Like an anchorless ship, time floats aimlessly across the broad sea. I do the math and come up with today as Tuesday, the day Miss Saeki gives a tour of the library, provided there are any people who want to take it. Just like the first day I came to the place. Spike heels clicking on the stairs, she walks up to the second floor, the sound of reverberating through the stillness. Her glistening stockings, bright white blouse, tiny pearl earrings, her Mont Blanc pen on top of the desk, her calm smile, tinged with the long shadow of resignation. All these details seemed far away now, and no longer real. Sitting on the sofa in the cabin, the door of the faded fabric all around me. Memories of our lovemaking rise up in my head. Miss Saeki slowly revoking her clothes, getting into a bed. My cock, not surprisingly, is rock hard as these thoughts filter through my mind. But the tip's not red and sore anymore and doesn't sting. Tiring of these sexual fantasies, I'll wander outside and go into my usual exercise routine. I hang on the porch railing and go through an ab workout. Then I do some quick squats, followed by hard stretching. By this time, I'm covered in sweat, so I wet my towel in the stream and wipe myself off. The cold water helps calm my nerves. I sit down on the porch and listen to Radiohead on my Walkman. Since I ran away, I've been listening to the same music over and over. Radiohead's Kids a Prince, very best of. Sometimes, Coltrane's my favorite things. At 2 p.m., just when the library tour is starting, I head out into the forest. I follow the same path, walk for a while, and arrive at the clearing. I sit down on the grass, lean back against the tree trunk, and gaze up at the round opening of sky through the branches. The edges of white summer clouds are visible. Up to this point, I'm safe. I can find my way back to the cabin. A maze for beginners. If this were a video game, I've easily cleared level 1. If I go any further, though, I'll enter a more elaborate, more challenging labyrinth. The path gets narrower, and I'll get swallowed up by the sea or fence. I ignore this and forge on ahead. I want to see how deep this forest really is. I know it's dangerous, but I want to see and feel what kind of danger lies ahead, how dangerous it really is. I have to. Something's shoving me forward. I cautiously go down a kind of path. The trees tower higher and higher. the air growing denser by the minute. Up above, the mass of branches nearby blots out the sky. All signs of summer have vanished, and its all-like seasons never existed. Soon I no longer know if what I'm following is a path or not. It looks like a path, is shaped like one, but then again it doesn't, and isn't. In the middle of all this stuffy, overgrown greenery, all definitions start to get a bit fuzzy around the edges. What makes sense and what doesn't? It's all mixed up above me. A crow gives out a piercing caw that sounds like a warning. It's so jarring. I stop and cautiously survey my surroundings. Without the proper equipment, it's too dangerous to go any further. I have to turn around, which isn't easy. Like Napoleon's army on a retreat, going back is more difficult than going forward, I discover. The path back is misleading, the dense vegetation forming a dark wall in front of me. My own breathing sounds loud in my ears, like a wind blowing at the edge of the world. A huge black butterfly about the size of my palm appears from the shade of the trees and flutters into my line of sight, its shape reminding me of that blood stain on my t-shirt. It flies slowly across the open space, then disappears among the trees again. And once it vanishes, everything suddenly seems more oppressive, the air chillier. I'm seized by panic, not knowing how to get out of there. The crow squawks out shrilly again, the same bird as before, sending the same message. I stand still and look up, but can't see it. A breeze, a real one, blows up from time to time, ominously rustling the dark leaves at my feet. I sense shadows racing past behind me, but when I spin around, they've hidden themselves. Somehow I'm able to make it back to my safety zone, a little round clearing in the forest. I plop down on the grass and take a deep breath. I look up at the patch of real sky above a couple of trees, just to convince myself I've made it back to the world I came from. Signs of summer, so precious now, surrounding me. Sunlight envelops me like a film, warming me up. But the fear I felt clings to me like a clump of unmelted snow in the corner of the garden. My heart beats irregularly from time to time, and my skin still has a slightly creepy feeling. The night I lie there in the darkness, breathing quietly with my eyes wide open, hoping to catch a figure appearing in the dark, praying for it to appear, and not knowing if prayers have any effect. Concentrating for all I'm worth, wanting badly for it to happen, hoping that wanting it so badly will make it wish come true. But my wish doesn't come true. My desires are shot down. Like the night before, Miss Saeki doesn't show up. Not the real Miss Saeki, not an illusion. Not her as a 15-year-old girl. The darkness remains, just that. Darkness. Right before I fall asleep, I have a massive erection, harder than any I've ever had, but I don't check off. I've made up my mind to hold the memory of making love with Miss Saeki untouched, at least for now. Hands clenched tight, I fall asleep, hoping to dream of her. Instead, I dream of Sakura. Or is it a dream? It's all so vivid, clear, and consistent. But I don't know what else to call it, so dream seems the best label. I'm in her apartment and she's asleep in her bed. I'm in my sleeping bag, just like that night I spent at her place. Time's been rewound, setting me down at a turning point. I wake up in the middle of the night, dying of thirst, get out of my sleeping bag and drink some water. Glass after glass, 5 or 6. My skin's covered with a sheen of sweat, and the front of my boxers is tenched in another huge erection. My cock's like some animal with a mind of its own, operating on a different wavelength from the rest of me. when I drink some water, my cock automatically absorbs it. I can hear the faint sound of it soaking up the water. I put the glass next to the sink and lean back against the wall. I want to check the time but can't find the clock. In this, the deepest hour of the night, even the clock's been swallowed up in the depth. I am standing beside Sakura's bed. Light from a street light filters through the curtain. She's facing away from me, fast asleep, her small, shapely feet sticking out from under the thin covers. Behind me, I hear a small, hard sound, like someone's turned on a switch. Thick branches cut off my field of vision. There is no season here. I make a decision and crawl in next to Sakura. The single bed creaks in the next away. I breathe in the smell of the faintly sweaty back of her neck. Gently, I wrap my arms around her. She makes a small sound but continues to sleep. The crow squawks loudly. I glance up but can't spot the bird. I can't even see the sky. I pull up Sakura's t-shirt and fondle with her soft breasts. I tweak her nipples like I'm adjusting a radio dial. My rock-hard cock slaps against her back of her thigh. But she doesn't make any noise, and her breathing stays the same. She must be dreaming deeply, I figure. Again, the crow cries out, sending me a message, but I can't figure out what it's trying to tell me. Sakura's body is warm and as sweaty as mine. I decide to pull her around toward me, slowly pulling her closer so she's face up. She exhales deeply but still doesn't show any signs of waking. I rest my ear against her paper, flat stomach, trying to catch the echoes of the dreams within her labyrinth. My erection's not letting up, so rigid it looks like it's fast forever. I slip off her small cotton panties, taking my time to get them down her legs, and get off. I rest my palm against her pubic hair, gently letting my finger go in deeper. It's wet, invitingly wet. I slowly move my finger. Still, she doesn't wake up. Lost in her dream, she merely exhales deeply again. At the same time, in a hollow beside me, something struggles to break out of its shell. Before I realize what's happening, there's a pair of eyes turned in on me, and I can observe this whole scene. I don't yet know if this thing inside me is good or bad, but whichever it is, I can't hold it back or stop it. It's still a slimy, faceless being, but it will soon break free of its shell, show its face, and slouch off its jelly-like coating. Then I'll know what it really is. Now though, it's just a formless sign. It's reaching out its hands and won't be hands, breaking apart the shell at its softest point, and I can see each and every one of its movements. I make up my mind. No, actually, I haven't made up my mind about anything. Making up your mind means you have a choice, and I don't. I strip off my boxers, releasing my cock. I hold Sakura, spread her legs, and slip inside her. It's easy. She's so soft and I'm so hard. My cock no longer hurts. In my past days, the tips become even harder. Sakura's still dreaming, and I bury myself inside her dream. Suddenly, she snaps awake and realizes what's going on. Kafka, what are you doing? It would seem that I'm inside you, I reply. But why? She asks in a dry, raspy voice. I didn't tell you that's off limits. I can't help it. Stop already. Get it out of me. I can't, I say, shaking my head empathetically. Listen to me. First of all, I've got a steady boyfriend, okay? And second, you've come into my dream without permission. That's not right. I know. It's still not too late. You're inside me, but you haven't started moving. You haven't come yet. It's just quietly inside me. like it's thinking about something. Am I right? I nod. Take it out, she admonishes me. And let's pretend this never happened. I can forget it. And so should you. I'm your sister, and you're my brother. Even if we are not blood related, we're most definitely brother and sister. You understand what I'm saying? We're part of a family. We shouldn't be doing this. It's too late, I tell her. Why? Because I decided it is. Because you decided it is? Says the boy named Crow. You don't want to be at the mercy of things outside you anymore, or thrown into confusion by things you can't control. You've already murdered your father and violated your mother, and now here you are inside your sister. If there is a curse in all this, you mean to grab it by the horns and fulfill the program that's been laid out for you. Lift the burden from your shoulders and live, not caught up in someone else's schemes, but as you. That's what you want. She covers her face and her hands and cries a little. You feel sorry for her, but there's no way you're going to leave her body. Your cock wells up inside her, gets even harder, like it's set down roots. I understand, she says. I won't say any more, but I want you to remember something. You're raping me. I like you, but this isn't how I want it to be. We might never see each other again, no matter how much we want to meet later on. Are you okay with that? I don't respond. Your mind switched off. You draw her close to you and start to move your hips. Carefully, cautiously. In the end, violently. You try to remember the shapes of the trees to help you get back, but they all look the same and are soon swallowed up by the anonymous sea. Sakura closes her eyes and gives herself up to the motion. She doesn't say a word or resist. Her face is expressionless, turned away from you, but you feel the pleasure rising up in her like an extension of yourself. Now you understand it. The entwined trees stand a little dark wall blocking from your view. A bird no longer sends its message. And you come. I come. And I wake up. I'm in bed alone. It's the middle of the night. The darkness is as deep as it can be. All clocks lost within. I get off my bed, strip off my underpants and go to the kitchen. And rinse the semen off them. Gooey, white, and heavy. Like some illegitimate child born out of the darkness. I gulp down glass after glass of water, but nothing shakes the thirst. I feel so alone and can't understand it. In the darkness, in the middle of the night, surrounded by a deep forest, I couldn't be any more alone. There are no seasons here, no light. I walk back to the bed, sit down, and breathe a huge sigh. The darkness wraps itself around me. The thing inside you has revealed itself. The shell is gone, completely shattered, nowhere to be seen. And it's there, a dark shadow, resting. Your hands are sticky with something, human blood. By the look of it, you hold them out in front of you, but there's not enough light to see. It's far too dark, both inside and out.